Hey everyone, welcome back to the Challenge Fandom podcast. Today we've got a very special episode of Challengers Unplugged, where we're going to be interviewing none other than Challenge 39 star Kyland Young. Kyland, thank you so much for hopping on with us today.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Dude, we're so happy you could hop on with us. And by the way, my name's Rick. This is my wife, Karina. And then the gentleman wearing all black, looking like Johnny Cash, is Tony Lance. And then we have Katie Pahura. And then you've already met Alexis, I believe, at Challenge Mania in Indy. Was that right?
Yeah,
that's correct.
Oh my God, I went through a whole intro without messing up. This is a new trend.
That was flawless.
You did so good. We're so proud of you.
You even got the city right.
I know. I'm surprised.
I try and bring out the best in people. So
you know what? You're doing it. I mean, I have the most thorough notes section I've had in quite a while for an unplug. So
yes,
I'm gonna give credit to you on this.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I know. I my responses can be thorough sometimes as well. So feel free to ring me back in at any point. I'm going too far.
We like it.
I would like to think that the best analogy for our show is kind of like Doug from that movie Up, where he's like talking, goes squirrel. Yeah, that's us. So we're gonna go along for the ride, and I think this is gonna work out well together.
Yeah.
So kind of jumping off from the very, very beginning, I did some research. I felt low key like a stalker doing all of this, but it said that you were born July 13th in 1991, and you're originally from the Southern California area. I'm thinking Victorville, Inland Empire, that kind of area.
That's exactly it. Yeah, Victorville is the high desert. The high desert's just a crappy little town in between LA and Vegas. It was meth capital of the country in at least the 90s, and maybe past that. I don't know. I stopped following the stats. Yeah, so I grew up there, and then I've been in SoCal my whole life. Came to LA like 15 years ago for college and stayed here.
Wow. And then I've actually spent time in Victorville. It's a small podunk town, like more Inland Empire. I lived in Hemet, California for a while.
Oh, wow. Hemet. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I had a good buddy that ended up moving to Victorville. So making that trip over the San Bernardino Mountains quite a few times. So
through the pass. Yeah.
I was in Marietta for a little bit.
Oh my gosh. What?
Yep. I've got family up in Forest Falls, like up near Big Bear, like Redlands.
Okay. Yep, I know Redlands and Big Bear for sure. Wow, this is wild.
Small world.
It is.
It really is.
This is crazy because it is a small place.
And just one more point of connection, we're actually in Reno, Nevada, which is probably like the second place to Victorville as far as meth capital. You know what I mean? So, the connections are happening.
We're rivals.
I don't go no team. I mean, and then to the counterpoint to that is then we have Tony, who's in Nova Scotia, Canada. So the complete opposite side of the country from us. And another country, to be fair.
I was going to say, yeah.
Still small town mentality. I'm in a town of like 8,000 people. So
wow, Nova Scotia,
right?
Yeah.
I feel like I hear about it so often that I assumed it had more people, but maybe that's the draw.
Like we're about an hour away from Halifax, which would be like the bigger city in the area. But I'm from a fairly small town,
which is wild because
you know what? Honestly, I had to spend a lot of time Googling about Nova Scotia after I met Tony. I was like, I need to know more about this Canadian province.
Right.
So I don't just lie about things and everyone's like, oh, sounds right.
I'm just saying, when you started telling us about the maple syrup heist, I was like, he's got to be fucking with us. Like, this can't be true. But it is. So,
How did you not know about the maple syrup heist?
Yeah, it's Canadian true crime.
I never...
Yeah,
that's a real question here. I feel it was one of those moments where it was like, I didn't know this before, but I'm going to keep this in the back pocket for trivia night because it's going to come up. I know it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So Kylan, when you were growing up, what were your like ambitions? What did you want to be when you grew up? Were you into sports? What kind of kid were you growing up?
I don't know. I'm pretty suspicious of old memories because I feel like I remember I read one time about how just good our brain is at making up a lot of memories, and I feel so. I'm always like, and I interpret things very like literally. So then when I hear that, I'm just like, what were the, I want to answer your question correctly, and I'm like, what were they actually? Is any of this real?
Are we real? Is this a simulation?
Yeah. Yeah. From what I can remember, I knew that I wanted, I was like, I remember having like a knack for like math, and I was like, oh, I want to go to MIT and be like a scientist or something, math, which isn't directly to math. So I should have understood like, oh, I was like an engineer or something, but I don't think I had made that distinction yet. So then, so nothing anywhere related to anything I've done as an adult. Pretty much, I feel like I was just like, I want to get out of the desert, and that seemed to be the premier path was education. Definitely a big education push in the family, and so we were like first generation college, and but then I took like this calculus class and I was like, you know what? I don't really like math that much anymore. So and I was already at a different school. I didn't go to like a math engineering school. So then, so then I started doing communications and marketing and social action and justice and conflict resolution. Sounds like a lot, but those were all the things I was studying. And because I feel like my brain's always jumped things. And then, it just had a varied career after that, I guess.
Well, and that was something I was going to bring up as well. Was I noticed, that you went to Victorville College, or Victor Valley College, and then ended up going to Pepperdine. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the high school I went to two high schools. First 2 years I was at the school, Serrano and Phelan in the high desert. There's like 80 non-white kids at this 3,000 person school, and that reflected in the environment in negative ways. And so I was like, this school, and it was already, the only reason that we went to that school was because we were like, it was supposed to have more opportunities, but it was just a bad environment. So then, so I switched to this charter school, and the charter school was right next door to the community college. So they let you take some classes there. So I was taking classes my junior and senior year at the community college. And then I went because I was like, oh, you can finish almost an associate's at like the community college prices and then save money in college. And then I went to Pepperdine, who accepted 0 credits from this community college. So that was just all for fun, I guess. But at the community college, I met my best friend, this guy, Brett Savage, who is the one who introduced me to Big Brother. His family was. I just made that connection right now. There was a reason.
Light bulb! I saw it go off. I saw the light bulb.
It was not useless. I did meet Brett Savage. He got me into Big Brother. Well, we were friends for like 7 years. Like we met there, friends. We lived together the whole time. 0 interest in Big Brother. I was 0 interest in reality TV. I was like, I don't want to watch reality TV. I finally watch it, and I was like, wait, this is a game. I love games. Why didn't you tell me? He's like, I did tell you for the past 7 years. And I was like,
you weren't listening.
Not very well. So fell in love, and that, so it was crazy.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome. That was your intro into
It's crazy too, because we constantly talk about like, serendipitous situations and like things that happen that are just meant to be. And you don't even really know why they're happening or what they're happening for. And then they end up leading to something bigger, and so that's cool. That's awesome. I love that.
That's really cool.
No, I do too. Yeah. I'm going to tell him. It's like his birthday soon. I'm going to be like, yo, remember VVC?
Yeah. See what happened here? Yeah, there was a reason.
There was a good reason.
So just out of curiosity, when you were at Pepperdine, what were you majoring in?
So I was majoring in marketing, and then they had to, what's the word?
Words are hard.
It wasn't a minor. They had programs. They had a program for conflict resolution and a program for social action and justice. And so my major was like marketing, advertising, and I did those other programs as well. So that was the focus.
Gotcha. Okay,
Absolutely.
that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Well, and part of the reason I brought that up is because I thought I remember hearing that you had done something, or you'd done a lot of work in marketing before, which is my line of work as well. And I'm always curious on how people get into marketing, because I always have a very big belief that it's sales based more than anything. So typically, I look at it, instead of sales being 1-to-1, marketing's more I'm selling as many people as I can at one time. And I saw, or I heard, that you had worked for Cutco Knives for a while. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was where I was sharpening my sales like teeth for sure. They have a great training program. So that was and it's direct sales. It's like presentations and things and what's it called? And also it's interesting too. It was funny. Like Cutco is, in my opinion, they're like probably, I haven't checked the market recently, but at the time they were just phenomenal knives. Like I did do a lot of research, and they do a lot of training. They do a lot of research. They have a crazy program as far as warranty. It's like a lifetime or forever warranty.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. But the training program is solid in the sense of they teach a lot of sales skills. But what I didn't like is they were very indiscriminate as far as like who you sell to. They're just like, oh yeah, everyone can afford these $800 knives. And I was like, everyone cannot. No, you guys are crazy. So I just went to everyone who I knew who could afford it, and that resulted in a lot of sales, and I was doing really well. So then they're like, hey, you should train. But then they're like, wait, never mind. We can't let you train because you're not forcing these people to sell it to everybody that they know. And I was like, well, no, because I don't think that's a good idea. So then they were like, oh, well, then, yeah, that's not good for us. So that was, it was a very quick introduction to more ethics in regards to sales and stuff too. So I had a crazy experience there, and I was like, no, that's not cool. But yeah, knives are awesome. So and then when I graduated, I was doing this internship at this marketing agency for a year. And then they were like, hey, they wanted to offer me a job. And then the month after I graduated, a month before I graduated, they had this internal issue that pretty much shut down the company, and who was doing well, but they, had some, I don't even remember exactly what happened. They're like, yeah, I can't actually hire you. So then I was graduating with 6 figures in debt and no job. And then,
oh my gosh.
And it was an internship.
It makes me want to throw up.
Yeah, it was an internship. I didn't have a car, so I was taking the city bus 2 hours each way to go to this internship. So it just was I was like, oh, well, this is a lot of time spent in a bad spot. And I got this job at this other marketing agency as an assistant for the CMO, and then just created my own role kind of over the years there. And it was just an awesome company. And it was very business development, sales driven, but really creative and awesome. Yeah. So we did experiential and social marketing for Red Bull and Nike and Beats by Dre. And it was right when I got there, they had just finished. There was a time where a guy skydived from outer space.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
So that was them. This is the agency that did that. And it was the largest stunt in the world at the time.
Wow.
And so they had really awesome stuff. And so I was working there and just was always just trying to learn. And what do you need? And the owners, the CMO and the CEO were just yeah, we need to get good business and more opportunities and close it. And so, it was just talking to companies and just sharing, sales is sharing enthusiasm. So it's sharing about what we're doing. Fortunately, they were doing really cool things, so that made it really easy to start conversations. And then the company was really cool, and so and then I got to ideate and because it was that was a cool thing. It was a smaller company, so we got to do everything. So it was we'd make the introduction, and then they'd give us their needs, and then we'd create a pitch around it. And so I just got to learn so much, and I got to grow there and created a whole new department. And it was yeah, I mean, they're still around. It's B Core is the agency, phenomenal company, phenomenal team, and that was my marketing like start.
That speaks to what I know about marketing, because like I took marketing as well. I went to film school first, took acting, and then went back to business school. And I was like, marketing is the creative arts of business if I'm going to look at it objectively. And that's exactly what it was. I ended up working at the YMCA doing their marketing and communications. And the entire marketing communications team was me and a guy I went to high school with. And we're still in touch today. But we worked there for 3 years. And like, that's what it was creating these opportunities and getting out in the community and everything like that, because you have to make it up as you go along when you're marketing, because you're kind of reinventing the wheel every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I love that analogy. Yeah, no, the creative arts for business, because
that is really good.
Such a true statement.
Mm-hmm.
Better trademark that, Tony.
Yeah.
Right?
You heard it here first.
Welcome to Career Advice by the Challenge Fandom podcast. Right? Believe in your product if you want to do great in marketing and sales, you know?
Well, I think we all like need to know about marketing too, because all of us have our own thing going on,
True.
like Alexis, and I know I use it in my business. It's sorry, Rick. I know what that sound reminded you of.
Well, there you go. It's the creative arts of business.
Gosh, I could absolutely use some knowledge in marketing. And my college path was nothing related to what I'm doing.
No, absolutely. And one thing I did want to, because I'd read this, that you'd also worked with a company called, is it Blavity? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. So I don't know how that. I don't even remember exactly how I met them during COVID. Oh, no, that's what it was before COVID.
He's blocked it out because it was COVID.
I was going to say, we've all blocked that all out. Yeah, it's not just you. We've all blocked it out.
So it was before COVID. I had I worked in this tech company with some friends that we ended up having like a positive exit for, but by this company that just wanted to buy like the data and the software from us, which was really cool experience, like build something and then, you know, be able to sell some part of it. And so then I left B Corp to try new and different things. And I ended up at where did I go? I was doing like consulting, and I met with some people from Blavity for like this other consulting thing, and then really like the company. Blavity is a Black media company that services like I think I actually just looked, and they're like 100 million, you know, millennial and Gen Z like audience, mostly in America, but some around the world, and it's mostly
awesome.
catered. Yeah, it's like I was gonna say like a Black like BuzzFeed, but it's bigger than that, and like news based, and so it was just it's the largest platform in the world, you know, catering to Black voices, and so it was just a really cool company, and they have Afrotech is this big conference, this massive business conference that they do that kind of helps with companies who want to recruit talent, and Travel Noir is like a travel brand and stuff, and so it was just a lot of stuff that I was interested in and passionate about. And so then I was there for a couple of years, working on the business development and partnerships team. And then from that was a couple of years, and it was awesome. And like the co-founders, Morgan and Aaron, are really awesome people I still am in touch with. Yeah, really love that experience. And then that's where I actually got recruited into the last job I had in corporate was Scully, which is an app that helps kids find scholarships for college. Chris Gray. Yeah, this kid, he was a kid when he started it, Chris Gray. He was like first generation college. He applied, he got over $1 million in scholarships. And so, you know, people were asking him, how do you do that? So he ended up creating an app to help kids find scholarships and apply.
Wow.
And then he took that to Shark Tank, and the app like was one that they wanted to, you know, to pass on because it wasn't making any money really. But Damon and Lori believed in it and believed in him, and now it's like become one of the most successful companies from Shark Tank's history.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's a really awesome it's just, it's that social impact company too. So it's like, it's not a nonprofit, it's a profit company, but it just is doing good. It's helping kids on scholarships for school. And so, companies like, so I love that business model too. And and so I was really enjoyed that. And then took a leave of absence to do Big Brother. And I was like, I'm just going to go. I thought I'd have to quit because I was like, he has to be gone for 3 months. But the owner and the team was really nice. We're just like, no, like you just take a leave of absence and come back. And then after the show, I was talking to Chris and he was just like, what do you want to do now? Like, do you want to go back into like working? And I was like, I don't know. I kind of like, I had a lot of fun. I kind of want to see like maybe if there's other opportunities. Like, I don't know what exactly. And he's like, you should. He's like, your skill set, you're always going to be employable in like the corporate environment, whether here or like someone else. And he's like, just see what is out there. And I really appreciated that energy and that thought. And so just decided to see what else there was.
It's awesome to have someone that supports you like that too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Because most people, like, especially like business owners and stuff, they're like, oh, I got a great employee. I don't want him going out into the world to find something else.
No, come back to me.
Yeah. So that's amazing that he was so supportive of you being like, yeah, you're a great employee and I love having you here, but go find what makes you happy. Like, that was so cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's the best. He's a phenomenal guy.
So, and part of the reason I wanted to ask about all these questions is because we get a view of people on reality television that's very edited. You're, for instance, on the challenge for anywhere between 3 to 12 weeks, depending on length of season. But combined time, we maybe get an hour and a half, 2 hours of just like Kyland Young on a season of the challenge. Obviously, with Big Brother, it's a lot more with their schedule, but
live cams and all that. Yeah.
So to kind of give people the picture of who the person actually is, not just who we're seeing on television. And I find it very interesting that you've had a very successful corporate career and then have decided to go into the reality TV world where a lot of what we've seen is kind of the opposite, where people get into reality TV for a while and then they step out and then step into the corporate world. And I think it creates an interesting dynamic that we see with you on television. One from the conflicts that sometimes we see you have on television where you are very curt, but you never go past a certain line from what I've seen, especially on the challenge with like Berna and Jay and all of that. And we'll dive into that more. So it's interesting to kind of hear the background on where that comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like I said on that one roundtable, I can't remember. I think it was the episode that you ended up getting eliminated, but I had made a comment about how I was like, Kyland is my favorite shit talker because you don't really know if he's talking shit to you because he just drops a little line and then just walks away. It's never aggressive or anything. It's just a bloop. It just drops it and just do. Yeah. Like, and I love it. It's so perfect. It's like corporate shit talking.
Per my last email.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I'm going to have to integrate that into more live conversations. I feel like that is a phrase we don't use enough.
Yeah, no.
My personal favorite is I've CC'd the owner into this conversation.
Oh, man.
Yeah, which is really Greg's got my back. That's what it is. So real quick before we get into reality TV, I know we've had the conversation. I know we've made memes about it. But if I remember correctly, you are somewhat into anime like Dragon Ball Z. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a few things, but that's probably, I feel like the most like, direct like anime connection.
Absolutely. I think that's the intro for almost everybody in America is Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
And I feel I'm glad that I remembered that because I would say us wearing all of this Dragon Ball stuff right now would be inappropriate if it wasn't the case. So,
I love it.
Look, like I said, we'll get into it, but we couldn't have the real life Goku here without me wearing all the Goku stuff. Okay.
Yes!
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow.
See, Karina, you really do need we got to add that sound to the button though. I can't, that's a horrible sound effect. The sound effect is not sound effecting today.
Well, I was looking through some of our memes, and my personal favorite was from when you were on Challenge USA and you were jumping into the water and someone went to dive and it looked like you were riding them like the Nimbus cloud.
Yes.
Oh, I did see that. He had.
Yeah. I was like,
oh, man, I need to find that. That was a great one.
Yeah, we got it.
yeah, we've got it. We'll resend it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
You talked about how your friend that you'd met in Victorville introduced you, your best friend, who you're still currently friends with, introduced you into Big Brother. Was it after Big Brother or had you watched the challenge before that? Where was your introduction to that at?
No, so I actually learned about the challenge in the Big Brother house.
Ooh.
I like I said, I didn't watch any reality TV besides, until I watched Big Brother. And then I'd only watched Big Brother. And I'd never seen Survivor or Amazing Race or anything. In the house, I remember Xavier and Big D one day were talking about like the challenge, and they're describing like, and I was like, "Wait, what is this? What are you guys talking about?" Like, and then and they described it. I was like, "Well, this sounds amazing!" Like, I was like, "Wait, like I'm here because I like to compete in games.
Why am I here?
I love games and competing, but I also love crazy like physical stuff too, and adrenaline and all those, and so I was like, so we can do that, like even more, like this and that together, like So it was, I was blown away, and so when I got out of the house, I was like, okay, I need to check this out, and you're already in a whole whirlwind of the way that like. I think any reality TV experience is probably gonna like flip your life, turn upside down sort of deal. But like the Big Brother experience, especially, is so stand out, different from everything else. And so, then I started like getting into it after that and watching, and was like, oh, this is amazing.
This is really cool.
We thank you for doing your homework.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
In Big Brother, one thing I did want to ask about is because you started off on the team, the Queens, with Tiffany, Claire, and Travis. And then obviously the main alliance that you worked with throughout was the Cookout. My question is, and we've talked to a couple other members from the Cookout, and I've always been curious to this because the relationships that you guys built outside of the Cookout was just as real. Like, I believe you were really close with Sarah Beth, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you were the one that ended up having to sit next to her on eviction night. How difficult was that, having to say goodbye to someone that you'd grown so close to, but knew you guys were working towards a larger goal with the Cookout?
Oh, great. Like, all of it was, it's definitely difficult because I think that's the thing that people have trouble understanding when they watch any of the reality shows, the games like the Challenger, Big Brother. Yeah, I'd say that those two probably stand out the most, even more so than like a Survivor, because the length of time that you're spending with the people, and the challenge even doesn't have the exact sort of time, but it does have the pre-existing relationships that is unique to the challenge environment that we can talk about later. But Big Brother, I think it was Tyler or something, was saying how to spend 100 uninterrupted hours with somebody in the real life, like, takes months probably in most scenarios. And it takes a couple of days in the Big Brother house. And so my favorite stat is that Big Brother has more lasting marriages than the entire Bachelorette franchise. And I think that
oh my god,
I think that that's a result of the fact that like the connections are so deep so fast. So like, you see, 9 days in is when the first eviction happens, and you see people crying, and they're like, well, that's because they know this person the way that you've known people for like months, in some cases. And so then when you double it down to like the Cookout, us each having our person outside of the Cookout, it's like, that's the person that we were closer to than probably anyone else, almost anyone else, depending on who we're talking about. And so, and the thing about the isolation of Big Brother is that you're so isolated, like it's so much more than you can really explain, because it's not just like no phone or TV or internet. It's like no books, no pen and paper, no music, no sunlight 5 days a week, because there's no windows and we only get the backyard 2 days a week, even though they make it seem like we're there all the time. And so it's just, yeah. So like, and you don't see other humans like in Survivor, Big Brother, or sorry, Survivor, Challenger, anywhere else. You get to see production, you get to see camera people, you see all that. You don't see any of that. So it's just these people become your entire world. You can feel like people forget coworkers' names by like the end because they're like just cut off from the world. And so when you eliminate someone, when you evict somebody, it feels like they died. And so that's the crazy part. Is like you're making this relationship and you're like, and we need to murder them. And your closest relationship. So it's just like, and the thing I always tell people too is that like betrayal is not a common act outside of like infidelity in relationships. Like it's not something that most people experience in their day-to-day life. It's just like, it just, there just aren't opportunities like, or incentives for it, I should say, more than anything. So that is, it's such an interesting part of the experience. So yeah, it's very hard to move act against most people.
Well, even like if you look at Survivor, you're going to a physical location, like you're going to an island. So, and what springs to mind is somebody on like season 43 always said, your alliance is the people that are waiting for you at home, but it's because you're somewhere like you're tropical. You're very much not home. Whereas in the Big Brother house, you are in a house, like you still have those amenities and you very much are a society. Like that is your town. Those are your people. Like that's the only contact that you have straight time. And I can't even imagine like the mental toll that plays.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the analogy, and it's probably a horrible one. I was thinking it's like 90 days in, except less dangerous.
Well, thinking no sun for 5 days.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in upstate New York, so in the winter, it's usually gray. Like, we are blessed today. We have sunshine. But I can't do it. I need the sun, so I'm not, nope.
Honestly, that sounds much worse than the bunker that they lived in the challenge and should probably be focused on more because people,
for sure.
like, I don't watch Big Brother often, but to me, like on a ranking of how hard it is, I rank it below the challenge. But knowing a fact like that, where it like really affects your mental state, like I guess I just never really thought about it like that. But that's a big.
The challenge is obviously physically harder and similar. Survivor's more physically demanding, but like you had Sari 4 seasons of Survivor. Like she's like a middle-aged like old woman, and she was you'd think living on an island would be hard, and she's like no, like Big Brother. She said Big Brother, and she's like this is harder. Like this is like obviously the physical is going to be different, but the mental and emotional like strain of the game is just it just is. It's just like, so that's why it's funny that you mentioned like the bunker, because I thought, I was like, from what I've heard, that's probably been the most difficult like environment for them. And it was, and you could even like Big Brother. I think personally, obviously I'm biased. I feel like Big Brother has done pretty well proportionally on the challenge. Like, the last, 4 seasons, we have 2 winners, partnered with CT, people want to talk about, but then like CT is like one of the first people to give them credit for their wins. So, and Casey and Amber, and you have Pauly making a final, I think all the seasons or most of the seasons minus USA. So I think that like a lot of that just has to do with the prep of, I'm in the challenge house and you can feel people that are like, starting to get a little restless, like 4 weeks in, and you're like,
starting to crack a little.
Like 4 weeks, like
rookie.
Like come on, guys. Like, I listen to interviews, even I listen to like the Death Taxes and Dance podcast, and like they'll talk about people come on, they're just like how stressful it is. I was like, I don't know if I ever felt stressed in the challenge house. Like it is. It's a vacation, like it's a summer camp. And it's hard, and it's challenging. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not hard and can't be emotionally and like draining or have or be tense. But like I never am there like, oh man, this is such a hard experience. Like it's awesome.
I think that also speaks to you because, I know like a lot, like, for example, when you go into the challenge, you're ready physically, you're ready mentally, you're ready socially, like you have confidence in yourself. And like, I think that's what I see a lot of people panic about is like when there's a possibility that they could get put into elimination. It's like, oh my God, I actually have to compete to keep my spot. And they freak out, right? Where you're not like that. You're very much like, hell yeah, I'll go to elimination. Are you kidding? That's fun. Let's do it. So I think that speaks to you as well. Just how prepared you go into games like this.
Well, it's funny because like when they, the one time when we had the stalemate, and when it was between Ed and Manuel and we had won the mini final and they stalemate, and it was a plan in motion, especially from me and Horacio to try and get the stalemate together. And when that stalemate hit, the stress that these people, Corey, Emmanuel, Jay, like the stress that they had about the possibility of going into elimination was mind blowing to me. I was like, wait, like what? Like, this is just part of like this game. Like you might, but they were so pressed about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, guys, like
you're sitting over there 3 eliminations
right?
deep already, like it's not that big of a deal, guys.
Been doing this to me all season.
I was like it's not but yeah, I guess that is just, I don't know, preparation and I feel like the thing I've been trying to change now is for sure, like, I need to make sure that I get mad at people for putting us into elimination because we're just kind of like they put in my friends elimination, I get upset. They put in me, and it's just like fine. But what I've noticed, like especially from learning from, I want to learn from like Wes and Bananas and them, and they're talking about like, no, like someone puts you in, you have to tattoo their name on your arm as your vendetta. Like you must destroy them for that, even if it's not like the most strategic move. That's what you must do. And I was like, all right, well, I didn't know that, and now I do.
Checklist. Mark that on the board.
Look, and I'm going to be honest. I know we're jumping a bit, but that's what we do here, obviously. Is with the challenge, a lot of people complain about, and there's a very loose term when it comes to rookies. It means you could have been on 1 season or 4 seasons, but you're still considered a rookie for whatever reason. But typically on someone's first season, there's a complaint from the fandom like, oh, they didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what they were walking into. They were, completely unprepared. And it's credit to you because that's one thing that was never associated with your time on this season of the challenge or USA 2 or USA. I mean, now, with that being said, USA was a completely different type of challenge compared to, I think, what we saw on the flagship.
Definitely.
With that being said, going into USA, one thing I've always been curious about was, as being just coming off Big Brother 23, and then you step in the Challenge USA house and you see all these former contestants from Big Brother 23 on there. Did you look at that as a hindrance or something that would have helped you get to the end?
I definitely looked at USA as an opportunity to play an individual game, because with the cookout, like I didn't really feel like we had that opportunity. I felt like, I was one of the, like, of the cookout. I think everyone, I do believe everyone was willing to do what was needed for us to move forward, and like, willing to put their own personal game on the line for the good of the group. But most people didn't have an opportunity to actually do that. I think that, there may have been a willingness, but they didn't have an opportunity to do that. I, by nature of power structure in the game, had the most opportunities to do that, like in winning more, more HOHs and vetoes and the side competitions and stuff. So I think that was it's all like exactly what I would have done, like, knowing how it feels, knowing the outcome. But it was, it's hard when you have to make decisions that are against your own individual goals, because most alliances, and I think that's why none of them have been as successful as us. Like, most alliances are designed for the benefit of each individual, and so they will only use it up until that point. And so we had to go, beyond that. And so I was really excited to like be able to play. And my goal was, to move towards the end and to work with people who made sense. And like, even when, the whole thing with taking out Xavier, like for, Alyssa talks about, it felt a little bit of revenge for her. For me, it wasn't. It was just like, that wasn't the strategic partner that I had in this game. And, and then if not for, I had my alliance with Tyson and Justine and Alyssa Lopez and Angela. And so I just was like, this is the group that I'm rolling with. And if not for, this random question about Madonna, they got me out in Elimination when they never have trivia in Elimination, almost never. That was, then I probably would have been in the final. And based on what we saw, I think I would have won. So yeah, it felt like that was the right move. And I still kind of stand by playing as an individual and approaching the game that way.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's really interesting because I was going to ask about, Xavier being in the house. Obviously, he had just won BB23. And I've always wondered if, the rest of the people from the cookout who were cast on USA, if they saw him, if you guys all saw him walk in and you were like, you're not making it to the end again, buddy. Bye-bye. You got to go. Like, we ain't letting you go to the final again. No way.
I actually didn't. No, I mean, I did find out that others did. Others from the cookout who were there did feel that way immediately, which is funny. It's like that goes back to me. Like I'm not a very emotional person, and that's probably related to being on the spectrum. But it's like I was just like, oh no, this is cool to see him, but then it became evident that like other people, both I was working with and that I knew previously, were like not interested in working with them. So I was like, oh, all right, well, then I have to pivot.
Yeah, and I think that was the bigger surprise to me was not your interaction, because you explained during the season that you're like, oh, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to play for myself. Mm-hmm. But like with Alyssa, because her and Xavier had such a close relationship, I think that was a much different feeling when she voted him in. One thing I did really want to give you credit, though, kind of switching up a little bit on USA, was your very first elimination win with Azza on Not So Fast. And that is a hell of an introduction into a challenge eliminations. Yeah.
One of the hardest ones ever.
Thank you.
That's my personal favorite elimination.
It's my personal favorite too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because you're a CT fan.
Your mic's over here in case you forgot.
I know, but it's habit. I talked to you.
I was just reminding you.
I'm not a smart man. I think this is something that I've really wanted to kind of talk to you about because you've mentioned it a few times, Kyland, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were diagnosed being on the spectrum in between Challenge USA and Battle for a New Championship. Is that correct?
No, right before USA. I shouldn't really talk about it as much on USA. Yeah, so it was after Big Brother. So Big Brother, have 24/7 live feeds. So funny enough, like the second person could kind of have a similar experience. Ian from season 14, like 10 years earlier, he apparently had a similar experience. And so after I got the show, I got like, emails and messages from people, most notably my older sister, who like it works in social work with a lot of families and such, but which she didn't email me, she talked to me. But a lot of people, emails and messages and stuff about, they're just like, hey, you remind me of like my brother, my son, or my family member. Have you ever, gotten checked for the diagnosis? And so my sister helped point me with some resources as well. And then, so I had very little familiarity with it, even myself, with the autism spectrum as a whole. And I had an ADHD diagnosis from college, but that was it. And so I went to, I was talking to some doctors and ended up getting that diagnosis, and was, I think, still figuring out how to navigate the reality TV world and like social media and everything. So by the time I went to USA, it was only, several months after, Big Brother. And then I just didn't talk about it as much. Like I had talked about it on social media a little bit, but in the house, I think I was still navigating language around it. So maybe, I don't know. However, I think I just may have mentioned like neurodivergence or something, if that, on USA. But yeah, so it was before that.
Gotcha. And a question I had is because when you did talk about it, sounded like there was some self-realization probably after some time with the diagnostic or the diagnosis in the way of your understanding of how you process information. Now, my question is, do you think that's been to your benefit on these shows, or do you think it's a bit of a hindrance?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely double-edged for sure, because it's like the benefit. I mean, one of I think the biggest benefits is not even directly on the show. It's after the shows. I've just seen the way that, being in the some sort of spotlight and having social media feedback can impact people's psyche. And for me, it is like, because I've one of the more common traits among like the autism spectrum, because everyone can be different, is literal interpretations of things. And so for me, when I see feedback or criticism or whatever, it doesn't come to, I just have the interpretation of like, oh, well, this person can be misinformed, or this person is just unaware, and then even if they're not, then it's like, okay, well, this is information. What do I do with that information? If it's helpful, if it's constructive, if it's whatever. And then also when it's just like pure vitriol, hate, whatever, trolling, my brain can do the math of like, oh, well, this is the negative voices are louder and more intense, but far fewer. Just
yes,
right.
Like
fewer to the point where like they can be insignificant, but or they are insignificant. But I've just seen that really impact so many of like my peers in this reality TV space in a way that like I've been fortunately like not as bothered by it. But it's not like, for me, it's not even like, oh, I rise above it. Like, it's not some emotional push or posture or anything. It literally is just like, well, that's just math. Like that doesn't, why would you worry about that? But I recognize that it is impacting people severely. And so, that's something I feel fortunate, but then more directly in the shows, strategic, like thinking as a whole, these are very, emotional environments. And that's what I was saying, even double-edged, going back to the elimination thing, when we had Corey, that was like, oh, he put in Horacio, and he was talking about like, yo, I just, I did the bravest move. And he was calling it brave because it's like you took a shot at strong players between like Horacio and he knows like I'm rocking with Horacio. So he's like, oh, it's brave. But like me and Horacio is he's not a super emotional person too. So it just kind of was like, well, no, because we're not gonna come after you. Like, you're not now our target because you put him in. Like, that doesn't change strategically, but like traditionally, I guess that is how people respond. So like making a logical, rational, like sort of moves or is something that, maybe more emotional decisions. Like I was saying, the Naz and West thing of like, people are afraid to put you in because regardless if it makes sense, you're going to come after them. That is an interesting thing that I'm like trying to adapt. Like, oh, like, yeah, people feel stuff, so let me operate off of how they feel. And
not so analytically.
Yeah, as analytically, and but in an analytical side comes helpful back for the the challenges and eliminations and stuff. Like, I take in a lot of information, which for many people on the spectrum allows them to go into overwhelm faster. And for me, this is where also the ADHD comes in. It helps me process the information fast. So I benefit from the combination. And so for like problem solving and a lot of things, it helps. And a lot of like, I feel like challenges and eliminations are like some sort of problem solving, even if it's, you have tug of war with Jordan, like there's a problem solving element like in that. And I think that is, you find the hack.
I think we all win at once. Sorry.
I was going to say, I can wait. I'm just making a funny comment. I can wait. You guys go.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting that some of the more successful people we typically see on the challenge are typically critical thinkers and good problem solvers. Mm-hmm. And I think it plays well. You know what I mean? Yeah.
All I was going to say is just hearing you talk just now about, analyzing that situation and analyzing the situation versus having an emotional response. It reminds me very much of a very level-headed Wes. Just a very level-headed Wes, analyze the situation. This is not a thing. I'm not coming after the worst person in the game. I'm going to do the thing that makes the most sense. You can take your shots at me all you want. That's fine. But I don't care. Like, I loved it. I loved it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, like, it's very clear when you have players like yourself and like Horacio who come in, it's almost like you look at the game as point A is walking in the house. Point B is finishing the final. And it's just different components that get you from point A to point B. You and Horacio, like, you look at elimination as part of the game. It's a factor in the game. It's how you get to the end. There are other people who look at it as, if I don't go in, then I can't go home. You just look at it as, if I have to go in, that means there's one less person in the house that isn't me when I come back. And I think that's why so many people have gravitated towards both of you as new players. And you are now people, especially after this season, that should be staples. Like, anytime that you and Horacio want to come back in the game, they should just have a slot available that you can occupy, because you bring like that's a different level of gameplay. So then, in addition to just people going against each other, you're actually also looking at completely different ideologies of the game going head to head and seeing how it plays out.
And I think that ideology, I love that analysis in general, just having different ideologies in the game. I feel like the other thing I try and that I've been taken away from all the games, even going back to Big Brother and USA and so on, is I'm trying to always consider, different skill sets, circumstances, abilities that people are entering the game with, and how that dictates the game they're going to play. Because it is like, I understand if you're, lover or hater, and I'm actually someone who on a personal level really loves her. Michelle is not like a very physical person. So her best path she has to play a different style of game than I would. And she is just inherently. And so it is like, that's something I'm always trying to consider is like, okay, like, you can't, it's not even somebody value system of like how they value the game and what they think is the right decision or not. It's sometimes they're just operating from like, well, what can I do considering my abilities, considering my position or whatever. They have these certain, they don't want to operate on the game of like, oh, well, if I just go in, that's part of it. It's like, no, like I'm going to lose. Like for me, and I think Horacio and there are probably other people, but at least from our season, I can point to us to, and obviously Nerys, people will say like, oh, I want to go into elimination because it's 50-50 chance to go home. I'm like, I've never looked at elimination and got the 50 chance of me going home. Like, and that's not like a cocky thing. There are going to be eliminations where it's going to be not in my favor 50-50, but like I try and do enough preparation so that when I enter it, it's not going to be a 50-50 chance. Like it's going to be a higher chance of me coming out than not coming out. And then, the scenarios where it's not going to be that. And that's like the clarification I like to make is I'm not saying it's always in my favor. I'm saying that it's always going to be in someone's favor. And I try to do all the things I can to make sure those odds are in my favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I've said this on the podcast a bajillion times, so I'll say it again. In my personal opinion, if you are not walking into elimination thinking that you are the baddest person to ever touch that sand, you've already lost. Like you have to win up here before you can win in the sand. And if you go in thinking, oh, I'm going to lose, or, oh, this person's better than me, you're already losing the game because you've already lost it mentally. So I love seeing, like, some people are like, oh, he's too cocky. No, I love seeing someone walk in and be like, I'm going to win this 100%. There's no chance this other person is going to be as good at me as me. I love that kind of stuff. So I love the approach that like you and Horacio take towards eliminations and stuff like that. Is I already know that I'm good. I'm already confident in my abilities. So are you as confident as me? Well, let's see.
That kind of stuff also makes the fans believe in you too. Like, for example, at the point in season 39 that we went to Challenge Mania and we had met you, we thought you were going to win. I was like, oh, this, like, he's figured it out. He's got all the right skills to make it to the end. Like, honestly, even to the very end, I was like, even after that, because I think you had just kind of let us know that wasn't going to be how it happened. And I was like, well, then who? Then who?
If it's not you, then who?
No, I felt that way too.
Well, to go back to what you were saying as well, Kyland, is like, I think it's very evident when we look at like someone like Jordan or CT, right? Like, yeah, you can say there's a 50-50 shot because there's two people going into elimination and one's going home. But anyone going against a Jordan or a CT, I don't look at it as a 50-50 shot. Now, as much as I might favor them, there are certain eliminations that don't play well,
we
like going against a pole wrestle against Fessy.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a 50-50.
There wasn't a whole lot Jordan could do about that.
No.
But then we
Absolutely.
also saw him win at something else that he should have lost, which was that tug of war against Josh.
Yep.
And he should have gotten his ass whooped in that. And he worked Josh that whole elimination.
Or even the back-to-back ride or dies with Chauncey.
With Chauncey.
Yes, that one. Oh my
Going
gosh.
for the foot.
That's one of my favorites for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was so awesome. Oh my
I'm
gosh.
such a pop culture fanatic with stuff like that. As soon as he did, I was like, sweep the leg, Danielson, sweep the leg.
On the floor.
So
I love it.
I think that's what's different about this season too, specifically and specifically Conquest, because every week if we looked at who we thought was making the final at the beginning of the season, and then we hit Conquest, it seemed like every week we were losing winner picks because of just how it shook out. And it was like every single time we came back, we're like, okay, we have to reevaluate who's going to win now.
Between the team here, our top four winner picks for the season was you, Horacio, Zara, and Nerys. So we lost 3 out of 4 of them in like subsequent weeks. We were like, what the fuck? Who's winning this season?
Yeah.
Well, and we also really favored Raven, and then it was like a double whammy on that episode, and we all cried.
Oh, yeah.
It was just
Raven.
awful.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
Ugly, big, fat,
Oh,
ugly,
man.
lip shaking cry.
So one thing I was curious about, because you mentioned this a couple times during this season, that you'd really done your homework and went back and watched. How many seasons of the challenge did you watch, like leading up to this season?
So leading up to this season, I'd only watched like all the way through 30 onward, but I went and I watched the Challengers and Eliminations for pretty much like a few random ones. Like I have to double check, and also it's been together now too. I've seen since, but like I know for sure like 10 onwards, Challenges and Eliminations, and then so it's interesting is now I've actually spent a lot of time since being back watching actual this season, because I was like, you know what, like this whole like I don't know, seeing the things I was talking about as far as like the different gameplay styles based on like skill sets and other aspects of the game. So I feel like that now I've been watching more of the seasons. It's really hard for me to watch like a lot of the like anything before, I don't know, Gauntlet, like to like anything like anything from more than like 15 or 10 15 years ago is really hard to watch. But but I feel like watching more and more seasons, the social dynamics of the seasons has been helpful and interesting. Lots of learnings.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought that up is because there were a few of the champs that showed up, and you could tell that outside of like you, Nerys, and Corey,
like Corey and Jay, nobody knew who they were.
No one knew who like Brad was when he walked in, kind of thing. But you realized the significance of that, and you know, it was interesting to see. I heard that you were supposed to, you were called for was it World Championship, where it was going to be kind of USA people from Challenge USA with Challenge vets, and that you were unfortunately an alternate on that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for World Champions. Yeah, the one where they brought in Challenge USA, Challenge UK, Australia, Argentina. And then of course I was alternate, and then I think a couple weeks in, Ben ends up having an injury and needing to go home, and I was like, dang, why couldn't that happen like 2 weeks earlier? But who knows where I'd be? I think all things work out. I was gonna say so I'm a little bit stuck on timing right now, but I want to continue. I was not paying attention to time, and I just realized I was like, "Oh, I need to leave."
It happens.
Honestly, what we can do, we can reschedule for tomorrow if you'd like to do that. The only
do like a part 2.
The only downside is I don't get home till about 5 p.m. Pacific time. Obviously, it would have to be a little bit later in the evening if that would work for you.
That works for me. Great. Does that work for everybody else? I'm sorry I talk so much.
No, that's the point of the interview.
No, we love it.
I have a wife who was very supportive of this podcast and was very excited that we were interviewing you. So she's like, I've got the kids. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I can very easily work with that.
She's the boss, so I'm lucky.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, then I'll send you over another little calendar invite with another link, and we'll just hop back on here tomorrow evening, and we'll finish out talking about the rest of Battle for a New Champ.
Okay, I'm so sorry it's so abrupt. I just was like, I was so involved, and it was not even, I was like, oh my gosh, wait.
No, it's
You're
completely
totally
okay.
fine.
We did the same thing to Horacio when we talked to him. He was like,
he was with us for like 3 hours. He was like late to doing a run on what was he doing? He was doing the Grand Canyon thing, right?
He was in the park when we interviewed.
I just assumed you said 3 hours. I assumed he was running the full 3 hours. So was he not?
Probably.
we caught him right after an exercise. Like he was in the park, like just relaxing, and then
the last like 40 minutes, he's driving in the car to go meet his friends because they were getting ready to run the Grand Canyon or whatever. So we totally get it.
Yeah, of course. So
of course.
Just your normal Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure.
all right, Kyland. Thank you so much for joining us. For you guys watching, unlike season 39, we are allowing wardrobe changes in between confessionals. Full disclosure, what happened was we had to cut the first part of the interview a little bit short, and a couple days later now we're picking it back up.
It's my fault, guys. My schedule.
It's not like we have the easiest schedule with 3 kids and working full time. So we get it. And for making the sacrifice to hop back on with us, we really do appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you. We're humble and lovable,
That's what we tell ourselves.
Yeah,
anyway.
I know. So I actually, in a stroke of, I don't want to call it genius, but just clarity, I actually remember what we were talking about right before you left, which was I was asking about world champions or world championship. And you were unfortunately an alternate on that season.
Yes.
It was leading to my question, which was, if you were to be on a season like that, where they kind of paired newer people from like Challenge USA or, first couple seasons with like more vets, who would you want to be partnered with? Like a male and a female?
Well, on the female, at first my brain thought of so many jokes, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to joke and make anybody feel bad by them being the joke. Well, I mean, looking at even just that cast, which I think helps narrow it down a little bit. I mean, I feel like if anything, it makes me a little bit sad. I do feel like Casey would be an awesome person to partner with. I hear that her, I know viewers, a lot of the rhetoric on Twitter, at least, is like how boring she is or dry or whatever. But apparently she moves so far in the game consistently. Not only is she good and skilled and strong and so many things, but she also is just so good socially, and it's just not in a loud way. And my understanding is that that's also really how she won Big Brother. Because I remember being a viewer and watching and thinking Tyler's the guy or whatever. But apparently everyone had such good feelings with Casey because she's really good at just building those relationships. And that's something that I struggle with as much because I'm not as in tune with everyone's emotions. And so are expressing them or social cues, all the same thing. So I think having a partner that is both talented and skilled, strong, and can compensate for probably an area where I feel not as strong, is someone I would look to. Someone that has those relationships. And I think, the big brother gives us a little bit, like I've met Casey, like we have a little bit of rapport from that too. I think of that crew, that's somebody who comes to mind. I do look at like across the board of recent female contenders. Like I'm such a big fan of Laurel and Cara Maria. Like I think like everyone is. And so either one of them would be pretty awesome. But the only tricky thing is, with Cara Maria, I feel like she has a similar social relationships as I do, which is lacking.
Yes.
And so that probably wouldn't be the best person to compensate. And Laurel, I think, is a little bit better. So maybe there's something there. But yeah, so that's, and on the guy side, I mean, I think that's the unique position I've been in, only doing USA and 39 is just I haven't gotten to play with any of the OG vets really. So, but I'm such a big Jordan fan. As just him as a competitor. I know. But that being said, I mean, the GOAT for me on the guy side is CT. Like I feel like it's just hard to ignore that combination of skills that he has acquired. And so, but just looking at this, he wasn't there at the World Championship. Right. So that's why I was like, all right, I see a Jordan comes in. And I think that he can physically compensate on things that like maybe a little bit more endurance. And then me on like, some puzzles and stuff. But going back to, I'm abandoning logic because I just love the athleticism that he has. Because really, if I need the relationships, it would probably be like going back to bananas instead of Jordan. Because I feel like Jordan is just is probably alienating people. He's seeing the cues and just ignoring them.
Yes.
And that's exactly it. Calling people love terrorists, and it's not a good look.
My God.
All right. I was with him on that one thing. I will say.
I was too. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I was too. He's like, I do not negotiate with terrorists. I was like, damn right. She can't hold that over you.
Terrorists of love. It was so perfect. I love Jordan so much. And literally, like forgetting the, going for like, trying to get somebody that has something that you're not so good at, but like forgetting that part, you and Jordan together as a team. Oh my God. That would just not even be fair to anybody else there.
So
literally.
I'm going to counter that. Like someone that would meet that deficiency, I almost feel like it would be a Tori on the girls' side because of all the social connections that she already has in place.
Yeah, that's true.
And I feel like, not to say that you don't have a very free-spirited side or open side, but we didn't see it in 39, where Tori's kind of known to be more on that, where she'll make fun of herself. She'll walk around with a wig and a fake mustache on and pretend to be somebody else. And so it kind of adds that dynamic, I think. But yeah, Jordan and you would be a very interesting pair. And I mean, just the fact that, we talked to Pierre from Zach Nichols' podcast, and he was telling us about how Jordan talked to Zach and said, like, Horacio's a real deal. So if you and Horacio get along as well as you do, I would assume you and Jordan would get along pretty well too.
That's what I've kind of guessed too, is that and that's why, like I said, I've been such a fan of Jordan. So then talking to Horacio, becoming so close to him, and him just telling me how much they linked up, and it's like all the same stuff that me and Horacio link up on. I'm like, ooh, that'd be kind of cool then if we get Jordan and we link up on the same sort of vibe as like me and Horacio. So because Horacio, that's my brother now, so like it'd be interesting for sure.
Heck yeah.
I think it would be super interesting. I hope we get a chance to see you guys both on a season together, even if it's not partnered.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's the crazy thing is how much every time someone asks me, they're like, who do you want to face in a challenge? I'm like, everybody. Like, what do you mean? like I don't want to be in, but at the same time, of course I want to try, any of these things with any of them. Like, how can you not want to try it?
And I think that kind of points back to what we were talking about earlier, and even the meme that we kind of made with you, which is we like to say you have the Goku mentality, which is like, no, I want to go against the best.
Yeah,
Like,
I want to know that I can beat the best. If you're the best, I want to beat you. And then like, that's awesome, you know? So I love that.
I will say, as you know, the anime fan in me and the Goku fan, a lot of it is like, I want to face them to see how good I can be. So
Yes.
like, and I feel like that's the distinction between like the Goku and Vegeta is that like Vegeta's like, I want to be better than you. And so find me the best so I can beat them, as opposed to like for Goku's like, find me the best so I can find out if I can compare or not. And that's how I kind of feel. It's like, I just want to see. I just want to see how far I can go. It's the best way to test myself higher is to find the highest test.
Well, and
Agreed.
isn't that always like what Goku says is like, you know, that's how they like a Saiyan like levels up their powers going against people who are stronger than them because it pushes you to be better, you know? So I feel like that's kind of the same, you know, type of thing that what you're trying to say. And so it just makes me feel like that Goku mentality thing really fits you even more than I thought before.
I've never loved you so much than I do right now. Like,
I saw it.
I can't even express it.
I can imagine that. Like, I was like, oh my God.
That was like a proud moment. Like when you see your child taking their first steps, it was along those lines. It was profound.
He introduced me to Dragon Ball. So,
Oh my gosh. I feel it. I felt that moment and just, yes.
Okay, so another kind of just off the wall question before we start getting into what I think we've all wanted to get into, but we have a build up to it.
Oh yeah.
So I saw on your story the other day that you were asking what Marvel character would you be?
I didn't even look at the results. Let's see if we can see them. And I wanted to. That was the plan.
I do that so much. I always put up like, I'm like, oh, let's do an AMA or a poll. And then I totally forget that I put it up. And like 3 days later, somebody's like, you never shared any of the answers from these. I'm like, oh.
Oh, see, I'm the exact opposite. Like, I feel like I have to reply to every single person. That's why it's really good. I don't have a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Because I'd be done.
It does pop. It does give you a lot of responses, I think. And so like, this is funny. I just scrolled down and I think that's funnier is when someone just doesn't answer questions because there's like, oh, Hulk, calm until unprovoked, Captain America, Rocket, Black Panther, T'Challa, and then randomly, when are you starting an OnlyFans?
Instagram giving people the questions they really want answered.
They really are. They're like, hey, they're like, yo.
I know it feels almost
cliche.
Not maybe cliche, but it's also because I've seen in your stories, but you do give off that vibe of like a Miles Morales, like the Spider-Man vibe.
Yeah.
So I can't appreciate that enough. I feel like it's so funny because like I'm such a big I don't know how I made that thumb happen.
We don't know.
It just does it. We don't know. It doesn't do it for us, just other people.
Okay. I'm gonna replace it with a thumbs up. No, right? It doesn't. Just one way. Just all right. Well, no. Like, I'm such a massive like. But it's funny. The reason I posted is Xavier posted it and was just like, "Hey, you should do it." And I was like, "Good call." Xavier from Big Brother, for those who don't know, in the Challenge USA, and he got overwhelmingly Black Panther. And I was like, honestly, I see that. Like, as much as I love Black Panther is just way more reserved than I am, and it just matches that so perfectly.
Yes.
And so. And I was thinking, and I was like, I don't know who that would be. Like, I could see like maybe Captain America stuff because like, but then he said Miles actually, and I was like, of course, like Miles, the Black Latino kid already. But then I just showed Horacio Nariz Into the Spider-Verse, and I was like, this is everything. And the second one I know is just as good, if not better. And I'm just like, oh. Like, yeah, so I appreciate that thought, and I will accept.
That's awesome. I can't wait to watch the second one. We just have to watch it.
I was talking to...
You haven't watched the second one?
We haven't seen the second one yet. I know.
It's on Amazon for $4.
We're failing, I know.
It's so good. It's one, like, the first one is one of my favorite movies, and I always tell people, I'm like, I'm not worried about overhyping it. And the second one was one where everyone told me like, oh, it's even better. I watched it and I was like, it's pretty good. I don't know if it'll be the first one. And now I like upon rewatches of them both, I'm like, they're comparable. I can't even decide which one's better. They're so good. Unlike Dune, the second one better. Just
Really?
so, and I like the first one. I was fine with it. Another one that got better with rewatch, but the second one, watch one, phenomenal.
Wow.
So
okay.
I've tried to get her into Dune. It's a little bit too slow. She needs something getting
It
going.
is.
It's slow moving, but once you kind of understand the plot line and what's happening, it's like, oh shit, what's going on? What's going to happen next? And I remember the really anxiety ridden feeling I had after finishing it, knowing that I had like a year until the next one came out.
But
I was so upset.
But you always say that. You're always like, oh, you have to give it some time. Like everybody always says you have to give it time. Like, for example, it keeps telling me, and I'm going to get so much hate for this. Oh my God,
no.
I already know they're coming for me.
Oh no, what is it?
Everybody keeps telling me, watch Yellowstone. And I'm like, bro, I've watched the first 3 episodes and it is fucking boring. It is so boring. I don't know. I can't get past it. And they're like, just get past the first few episodes. And I'm like, how? How? It's so boring.
I have never seen a single episode of Yellowstone, so
all right, then they can come for us both. Though.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you, honestly. I'm like,
I put it on last night. I fell asleep in the first episode. It's just something about cattle ranching doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, I can't do it.
No, and the first, here's what I'll tell you, though, because I'm with you. We're linked up on Yellowstone right now. Dune, the first one, it is so slow, and it's such a build-up movie that it felt like nothing happened. But then I will say, not only is it good prep for the second one, but I would even say like the second watch was just so much better. And it's not like it became like suddenly exciting, but I think I could just observe it at the pace that I knew it was going to be. And I just know that like me, because it's like me and Derek X, we both watched Dune. We had seen it one time, and then we rewatched it before we went to go see Dune 2. And we were like texting each other because he was watching it. We were watching separate. And I was like, yo, like, is this so much better than I remember? And he's like, yeah, it was. Like, it is so much better. So, and the second one, though, instantly for both of us was just so good. And it was the first time, too, where I was like, oh, Timothée Chalamet, he's him. Like, people have been trying to force him down our throat. And I've been like, he's so whatever. This movie, I was like, oh, he's something. All right, let's see it. So watch the first one to watch the second one anyways. And everyone watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse.
Heck yeah, definitely do that.
The second one's on Amazon right now.
Yeah, it's on Amazon right now. First one's on Disney Plus. And yes, Dune sounds like a Sunday morning movie when I'm not going to fall asleep.
I love that. I say that all the time. Yes. Sunday morning movies or Sunday afternoon movies. It's like daytime when I'm fully awake.
Yeah,
slow day.
Exactly.
I love that. I didn't know other people said that.
I'm just going to kind of put this out there just to be contrary to you guys at this point. To me, it's call in on a Thursday and watch it at about 1:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, no, that's
to tap out that afternoon. That's where it was for me. Because I had free time. Kid was asleep. It was where it was at. But that's just me.
Well, I mean, with the kids, you got to find brand new gaps. That makes sense.
It's like that Bear Grylls meme. You got to improvise, adapt, and overcome. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's exactly what it is.
Makes sense.
So, okay, before going into 39, I do like to know, like, look, I know with especially shows like The Challenge, there are some relationships that are there prior to going in. So one of my questions was, with Horacio, did you guys know each other beforehand?
So, interesting, I think the probably most relevant thing is that my closest relationship overwhelmingly going into 39 as someone who had very little to no relationships. I didn't meet prior to that. The only people I'd ever even met a little bit was Michelle, barely, Jay, even less. I may have seen Colleen at like a party.
Okay.
Like some challenge event party or something like that. And Mariah, same thing. I saw her at like a charity event. I think it was Give Kids the World or something. So like 4 people. And Nerese, same thing. Nerese and I had hung out like 2 or 3 times, but briefly, like at parties or watch parties or whatever. And then I met Horacio when I was hanging out with Olivia. So Olivia, overwhelmingly, my most deep relationship of everybody there. The only person I was like, you're the only person I know. I called for my pre-show like thing. I don't think they showed my call the way that they showed I think they showed Jay and Nerys call Nelson or whoever they'll like show in the 0 episode, the episode that goes before the premiere.
Oh yeah.
That was like my call. Like they have me working out, they have me working on puzzles, and then I'm like, yeah, and I don't know if they showed it, but when they came to film, I called Olivia. I was like, yo, like we're gonna be there, and like I don't know anybody else but you, pretty much. And she's like, of course, I got you. We're good. We're locked. I'm like, great. And so, so that was the extent of like my relationships, and specifically to Horacio. When I was hanging out with Olivia, Horacio came over for like 2 days and hung out because I was there for like 5 days. It was Super Bowl week. There's a bunch of events going on. Gotcha. She lived in Phoenix where it was last year. And so we were going to events and stuff. And then Horacio came, we did some workouts. Me and him linked right away. Like we clicked, but it was brief. It was like a day and a half. And so we did a workout and we were just talking about David Goggins and all this, like, and Spartan races and stuff. And we just linked really quick. I was like, yo, this guy, I like this guy. And, but I didn't know what it was going to be like. And I knew coming in for sure, like, I knew that if anywhere on his list I knew I was under Jay, because him and Jay like played together. And like when you play a game with somebody, like that relationship's so deep. And so I knew I was coming in at like 0 with so many of these people. Yeah. And I knew I was nobody's number one, and I was okay with that because in the challenge, you don't have to be people's number one because there's multiple people make to the final. So it's just like, I'm like, yeah, as long as I'm somebody's number 2 or 3, and unless you're Michelle, and then 12 people are number one. Like, I'm saying they're her number one. I'm not great. It's props to Michelle for having so many people that wanted to be her as number one. I'm not criticizing Michelle. She did that well.
Yeah. Honestly, I will say that I do think, like, first of all, I think I do not agree with the fan base majority. I think Michelle is an incredible challenger. And I think that she could do really, really great on this show. I do think that the one thing that's going to continue to hurt her game is just how many people she wants to constantly protect. And it puts her in really bad positions. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of people throughout the history of this show have large alliances that they're protecting, and they're not able to juggle it. But Michelle seems to juggle it pretty well. I mean, she fumbles a little bit towards the end, but she juggles all these people. I'm like, I could not handle having to take care of that many people. I would freak out.
Well, she's almost a victim of her success because she takes care of them so well. And one thing I think that she's very good at is connecting with people. And it's not fake or insincere, it's genuine. I think that's why the connection's so strong. But then it's so strong that person's like, oh, she cares about me. So she 100% has my back. And then it's like, well, she does care about you 100%, but she has these people's backs. So then that person then feels like, oh wait, that person then opens them, is more quickly to feel betrayed. So it's great for the short term to move you a certain point, and then it can be, it can really bite you in the end a certain way, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, look,
for her, not for me.
Yeah. Well, I'll give her flowers. I mean, look, there's multiple different ways to play the challenge, and hers is socially strong, and she's good at that part of the game. Do I think she's out there going to win any mini finals? No, probably not.
I mean, we won the mini final. Is she going to win the real finals? Different question.
Is she going to win a mini final if it's an individual?
Without me?
One?
No.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
wait, no, what? Sorry, what were we saying?
Wait, huh? But here's the thing is it always bites them in the ass unless they can back it up on the other end. So getting into 39, the first thing we see as viewers, other than the phone calls out saying, hey, I'm going to be on, blah, 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 is you guys in the arena and you guys are just kind of standing there, like trying to figure out what's going on. Out. And then all of a sudden, like, and I saw it on your face, you're like, I want to walk around and look at things. We're just standing here. How long were you guys actually standing there before you decided, like, oh, I'm going to hop off stage and go look at this?
Okay, it's a while. But I also want to give like a little bit of room, only because so much of filming these shows is standing around waiting. So you're kind of used to it. Like they're like, hey, stand here for 10 minutes because we want to get drone shots or we want to get a shot of everybody's face or whatever. And they didn't say that this time, to be clear. But
basically what we did is we asked the people who were in front, we're like, hey, what did they say? Because it was a solid, I don't know, 40 plus minutes that we were standing up there just waiting. And for us, we're just like, nobody's talking to us. And we're also new too. That's the other thing is that like, it's not like we had, you know, the Johnnies and Jordans or nieces or whatever, somebody to speak up, be like, we're not going to wait or whatever. Or to expect like production to try and pull one over on us. Like we don't necessarily think that way as readily. We're I think definitely green in that sense. And so when you had, so then we asked, we're like, hey, what'd they say when we walked in? Because I was at the back of the line. What'd they say? They're like, they said, walk in on stage and you guys will know, you'll know what to do. And I was like, so they didn't really give any instructions, like, or something like that. I was like, so did they say that we have to stay up here? And they're like, no. And then so that's when me and Michelle were talking about, we're like, should we go down? And I was like, I'm definitely a forgiveness over permission sort of person. So I was like, let's see if anybody stops me. And, and they didn't. So yeah.
That's awesome. I would have done the same thing. I'm like, what happens if I go down here?
Well, and it was just
what's gonna happen?
Let's see what happens.
It was one of those scenes like when is the curiosity going to win out? When is that, you know, impulsive thought going to win out? Like, I'm going to see what's going over here by these boxes.
That's, you know what though? That's also kind of messed up on production's part because they were just sitting there watching you guys probably like, how long is it going to take them to go down there?
That's exactly what they were doing.
Having a little show of their own.
So one thing you mentioned as soon as, and I don't remember if it's the same episode, but I know it's pretty early in the season, and forgive me for not knowing the exact episode, but there was quite a bit of them.
You're telling me.
Yeah. I miss the old days when it was like 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Get through that season quick. You know what I mean?
I think we could have done that, or at least done 2 a week or something. Yeah. But hey, I'm not complaining for being on TV for half the year, so it's not the worst thing.
I was going to say. Yeah.
Look, one show half the year and you're not on 3 times a week like Big Brother. I mean, you get some
or
more
live
time
feeds. Yeah.
But you mentioned like part of coming on the show, you were doing your watch throughs on previous seasons. And one of the previous seasons, Melissa was on there. And then you see her on the stage. You mentioned like, well, I had a crush on her when I was watching it. And now I see her in person. So how was that? Was that like a little bit of a starstruck moment where you had to gain some composure before you went and talked to her?
So it wasn't on stage. The first place that we see each other is at the airport. So at the mix, the international airport. So we leave, everyone from the US met in one airport. Like we all flew into one like major airport. And then we flew from there into like Europe. I think we were in like Germany or something like that. Germany, we linked up with the other internationals, all linked up at one airport before we went to Croatia. And so it was at the airport. I was like, oh, like Total Madness was the season I had just finished. So I was like, oh, like what's like, I did just see her. And so I think that's maybe where, I don't know, that's where like a little bit of it came, because also in addition to me thinking like, oh, this is a pretty girl, I also was like, I like how I'm a stats person too. So I'm just like, yo, this is the girl that's been in 3 seasons and I think was only eliminated once because the other time she climbed a mountain pregnant, and then the time before that she like got in a fight, and then not only that, then she got called to be a mercenary after only doing 1 season. And I was like, that's kind of badass, like to be called in at that level. So I think I was just impressed by that. And so it was definitely an interesting moment. But by then, fortunately our first encounter didn't have to be on camera.
Yeah,
that's good.
That makes it a little bit easier.
Fortunately for me.
Yeah. Fuck, I can only imagine if like they caught me on camera the first time I met her. I've just been, huh? What? Yeah. Oh, okay. Shit.
That's sweet. I love it. I love. I'm romantic.
It's, without getting all mushy, it is nice. Love is a great thing, and everybody should experience it. It's totally worth it. Even with the headaches that come along with it.
Oh,
and the abuse.
Oh my God.
I'm joking. Don't put up with abuse at all. Just putting that out there. Don't deal with that shit.
Yeah, don't.
So getting on to a much easier topic to talk about. We walk in once they start showing the different people on the challenge and how it's all kind of breaking down. We get this initial setup that production pushes of a US alliance and an international alliance. Knowing what we know now, that doesn't seem like that was ever really going on. Did you see that happening? Were you a part of those talks?
Week 1, day 1, yes. I was under the impression that that was a thing. And I was like, perfect. Let's ride these numbers, coast to final 12 or whatever it was. Perfect. This is so simple, guys. We can just do this. 3 days later, they're like, let's put in Chauncey. And I was like, hold on, guys. What? Why?
He's not the international squad.
Like, why do this? Like, and I told them, I was like, if you start this, this is the slope down from this very easy path. Now, I understand now, in like hindsight, and knowing what I know now, it's just like, okay, wait. Michelle, who was the central hub, Michelle and Jay, like they had the pre-existing relationships with Emmanuel, Berna, Colleen, like they had these internationals and then obviously developed the new ones with Callum and Mariah with James. So it's like, it wasn't going to it wasn't a thing for them because they're like, yeah, we have US, but like, I have these other relationships. I didn't. So for me, I'm just like, it was so simple to me. I'm just like, oh, why not just ride with this? Like I said, a very easy ride, 12. But that was from my perspective. And so I understand from theirs, but I thought it was a real thing. I think it could have been a real thing. I feel like Chauncey was in a similar boat. Raven was in a similar boat. At least those ones, I know we're in a similar thought. So that was an interesting twist of the house.
It kind of signified really early how much control Jay and Michelle had in that house when Chauncey was first up on the block.
Right.
And well, first for the men up on the block. I mean, and then we went into, well, even starting the week beforehand, a long line of people getting nominated and then giving the worst speeches known to man. Like I'm sorry, it's so true. Like Jessica, Chauncey.
I was like, Chauncey, stop.
Yeah, you should don't ask
painful.
open-ended questions. Just don't put yourself in that situation.
It was painful.
And I'm curious, were you in that situation where you're like, please stop, but don't because it's a train wreck and I've got to watch it happen?
No, I am not that person. I was like, stop. So like, I almost wanted to stop it. I almost wanted to out loud stop it, but like it just was to what end? I just was like, oh my gosh, it was more tragic than funny while we were there. Especially because I was like looking at him as like a number. I was like, yo, this is part of the US. This is one of the few people I'd met him like once before too. So this was like, it just was not pleasant.
Yeah. It was not a good start for the season with those intro speeches. And
yeah, those were interesting.
And Jessica's, like you said, wow.
Oh man, I don't know. I really just don't understand what she thought was going to happen with like the charity thing. I don't know if she thought that was going to make you guys want to keep her in and let her win the money so she could donate it. Like, no, that's going to make people want to send you home more. Like, that makes no sense.
I mean, just if you're going to say the money doesn't matter, just say, I mean, the money's nice, but it doesn't matter because I want the title more than anything. Don't say the money doesn't matter. I'm going to give it all away.
So many other things that could have been said. Just so many things.
So, I mean, with that being said, it kind of gave you the perfect opportunity to know what not to say if you got in that situation, which unfortunately we saw you in that situation a lot this season. And I think one thing that kind of led to it was your relationship with Melissa.
Or at least that's how the US Alliance painted it, right?
That was a scapegoat for sure.
Okay.
Huge. Yeah. No, it was just one of those things where like I said, I listed all, that was a point of contention. Like even at the reunion was them kind of like, Jay at one point tries to like bring it back up. And I was like, okay, so, sorry, it wasn't even about me. It was about them. I was like, because he says something like, oh, well, they could have played their game differently. I'm like, how? What was the scenario? If you had no relationship with them, this is the 14 people you're protecting. So we move them up from being number 20 to being number 18, like that's the only room that you actually had for them to move.
Yeah.
Like at least, well, and I will say Big T was at least during our season, her own worst enemy. Like, she would very, she wants to play the game. She's an exciting person. And so she would, be like, hey, I'm going to tell 4 different people 4 things just as a strategy move. But unfortunately, there's people who talk to each other. And then they're like, hey, you lied. And then she's like, I didn't lie. I just played a game move. And they're like, well, yeah, but the game move was lying. And she's like, no, I don't lie. And she means it. So you're thus clashing if you're speaking different types of English and different types of thought in that scenario. And so I was very much like, can we please get Big T out? Because me and Melissa are good. So I'm like, I'd like this person to stay. And I think if we separate this, it could leave room. And honestly, I think it could have, because it's Raven who is one of the advocates in this off, obviously advocates for targeting Melissa in the wake when she actually goes out after Big T had already left. And if it wasn't Raven and Asaf's win, there was a pretty good possibility that Melissa could have shifted away from that bottom position because there were other inroads she was making in the house through herself and through me. And so, yeah, but as far as like that relationship being something appointed, it just is like, I think that it was, and we saw it with Michelle and Callum. Like, it's not true. It just is true when you want it to be.
Well, and Mariah and James.
Yeah. It's just true when you want it.
Yeah, they held on to Mariah for the whole damn season, but the whole time they were like, Kyland's talking to somebody from the other side. I'm like, so is Mariah. Like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Well, it's back-to-back episodes, I think, that Michelle's like, Kyland's just with Melissa. I don't know what his time is. And then, but Callum, I just tell him what is on a need-to-know basis. And let's not like, and I'm like, well, hold on.
He was doing the same to her.
Also, yeah.
Oh, shit.
Man.
Shots fired.
Sorry. I've had that one in the back pocket and I've been waiting to pull it. They're not all hits, but some of them work.
That one hit.
I'm with you. Like when you say something that hits, like, and it's like, damn, that was good.
I'm glad it was recorded.
That's how I felt at the reunion.
There you go.
Oh, we're getting into that. We're getting into that one. Yeah,
I'm so excited. Oh my God.
Because I saw a tweet about it too, so I've already got that in my notes. That was one of the good reasons for the interview getting pushed back a little bit. I was like, oh, we got some more time.
Right?
Yeah. I thought it was a lame ass excuse. The whole, well, he's been talking with Melissa. It's like
100%.
It's like, come on, you're talking to Mariah's talking to James. I don't know how, he barely speaks English. But on top of that, she's talking to Callum, and it just made no sense. And I think, and look, this isn't really a question, it's more of just a statement. It really pissed me off the most when you kind of realize that you were going to have to separate, and you and Horacio and Nerys kind of went off to the side and had Olivia. And then you start having those conversations with Colleen because she realized where she landed, but she never made that jump. And it was like, Colleen, you're so dumb.
Yeah.
At least these people are going to keep their word to you.
Well,
like Jay and Michelle are just going to tell you whatever you want to hear because you're the bottom of the list.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because I feel like, because I think that her argument or Colleen's supporters' arguments, or not like I'm against her on a personal level or anything like that, are like, oh, she made it to the final and got third. And it's just like, yeah, but like she kind of fell into because of things that were happening around. Like, there was, if she had switched with us in the vote, nothing changed. Like she still ends up in the final. She's in like, there wasn't an action she took that made a difference for her getting further in the game. Now, was she considering like, hey, I want to get in the game with people I can beat. So like, I don't want strong players to be there. So that's why I'm not aligning with like a Nerys, Kyland, and Horacio. Then all of a sudden, and all these things I'm saying applies to Ed too. Then it's like, yo, props to you. Great move. Except you never say that. not in a confessional, not at the reunion, not in a single interview do you say, yeah, you know what? I decided to stick with this alliance because they were weaker players. So I wasn't worried. So like, I'm like, yo, that's strategic. Good call.
Yeah.
But you never say that. Then until you hear me say this now, and now they might start saying it, who knows? But it's just like, then I can't give you credit for because things worked out for you, but unintentionally or not based on intentional direct things that you did. So that's kind of my thing with gaming in general, just as like someone who, you know, is like loves these games and loves the gaming side of it. It's just like, yo, like going back to Jay and Michelle, like they very actively got themselves as far as they did. And so I can't knock that, even if I disagree with a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot more flowers to give Michelle than I do Jay.
You're not alone.
Jay, yeah, no, I know. I'm not in the minority.
He had
in
a
this
rough
situation.
game.
Look, he made some very poor decisions and made them personal instead of keeping it game.
I like what he said better.
If he would have kept it game related, people wouldn't say as much. But when you personally go, I'm going to make her choose between her boyfriend and her best friend. Like, that's just fucked up. You didn't have to say that. Just be like,
because it's fun or juicy or whatever.
And then just her. Yeah. It just, oh man. Yeah. That was just not okay.
Yeah. It just, he really, yeah, there's a few other things too. They did that. Just was like, why do that? And then also then he's watching it and he's just like, you know, just getting the villain edit. I'm like, no, you're just getting the edit of what you did. And that's like, and you would be so much happier and probably well liked if you took the West route. And I'm like, you know what? I'm the villain this season and I'm going to drink from my goblet of power and become drunk off of it. And this is me this season and like own it. But instead he's like, why are people saying that the mean things I did are mean? It's just like, it's in the question. You said it in the question.
Accountability. Like that means so much to the fan base. And I think to the challengers as well, because I think that, you know, when you play a game the way Jay played, he's now got concerns for not just the fan base, but for future challengers he may play with, whether they were vets sitting at home watching or whether it was people like yourself playing in the game with him. He's going to have some trust issues going forward. You know, so it's like, at least take the accountability, because everybody loves a good villain, but nobody loves somebody who can't take responsibility for what they did, you know?
Look, and I'm just going to put this out there. I'm so sick of hearing, well, this is how they play on Survivor. No, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
I've never heard anyone on Survivor be like, you know what? I'm going to make you choose between your best friend and your girlfriend and then your other best friend. Yeah. Save one. Nobody does that.
And well, to be clear, like, I'm very much in support of psychological warfare. And I'm like, I am fine actually doing a move like that because I want to cripple the other side, but I'm not going to do that to my friend.
Exactly.
Right. I'm going to do that to somebody. If I don't know you, if I don't care about you, I'm like, they're on the other side, they're on the other team. This is kind of a dirty move, but let's go ahead and do it because it helps our side. Then but then I'm not going to say that you're my friend. I'm not going to say I care about you and I do that to you. That's where it's contradictory. And that's why I'm like,
Well, and for me, I think the thing that got me the most about that specific move that he made with making Nerys choose between Horacio and Olivia, and then obviously yourself and Zara were down there as well. But I think the thing that got me the most with that is he could have gotten the same outcome with almost any of you four down there, but he specifically wanted to hurt Nerys. So it felt very personal. It wasn't like
it was,
let's attack that alliance by making them all choose between each other, but let's make sure Nerys doesn't have to make the choice. You know, let's make Zara make the choice or Kyland, whatever, you know. But instead it was, let's make Nerys because it just felt like his intention was to hurt her.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I called it out in the moment. I called it out afterwards and was just like, I think that was my issue with like, especially him and Mariah saying like, well, that's not what I wanted to happen. And then we're watching Mariah talk to James like, hey, do this because it's going to be juicy. And I'm like, okay, you've been walking around the house saying, I never lie. But I told you, I was like, hey, that's messed up. And you're like, yeah, I don't know how that happened. It's like, well, now we see that you do lie. And you lie to her friend. And you got caught up in the game. And I don't think she's a bad, person for it and apologize for it now and their friends or whatever. But it's just like, I think that's for me. I'm just like, nah, like the And I think that's the nature of having so many new people is we had a lot of people who were just playing for today. And I don't think that you should only play for the future, but every episode of Bananas podcast, he's like, it's a jar of jalapenos. What you do today is going to burn your ass next season. Like,
yep.
And I think that if you're not thinking long term, then it's just different than me.
Yeah, this is to me the survivor mentality is play for this season because this
you
is
don't
my
come
only
back.
shot.
You're one and done, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but what first thing I said to Karina when I saw Jay pull this basically up into the final, I looked at her and I go, he will never get past the midway point ever again.
He is
gone before they get to the midway point in every future season, regardless if it's someone from this season or the vets, because you're telling me that a Jordan or a Zach or a Laurel or any of these other people are going to see this and be like, I want to work with him.
CT, Bananas, like literally any of them.
No. Well, Bananas wasn't working with him prior to this. So.
Well, no, but I'm just saying. Yeah.
So before we get way into the end of the season, I do want to bring it back a little bit. You did mention that you spoke up, and that's something that you did quite often this season, which was speaking up during, like, I don't know if they called it the tribunals, but nominations. Whatever. And you were one of the more vocal people on the season. What made you decide you were just going to speak out on these things? Is that just your general nature in everyday life, or?
I'd like to think to a certain degree. I feel like, I definitely feel like I'm an advocate in general for silence is complicit. For a lot of, but one of my focuses in college was social action and justice. So I do think in general we're speaking out, but I don't want to turn my challenge game into some, noble moral high ground stance. As far as specifically for the challenge, I think part of it comes from competitiveness. I want to play this game. And there's one quote that people will say that's just silence can't be misquoted. And I think there's a power to that. But then for me, it's more silence can be misunderstood. And I think that for me, I'm just it can be ambiguous. And so for me, I'm just you know what? One thing that I appreciate is that people can know how I feel. And sometimes I feel like I'm not a very impulsive person. I think that I don't know. You know what it is? Oh, there's this girl, this speaker author, her name's AJ Lovey. And she had this TED talk that I really remembered. And she's like, whenever I'm thinking about whether or not I should say something, I usually ask myself 3 questions, which is, do I believe it? Can I defend it? And can I say it with love? And I feel like I don't always do that third one, but I at least think of those first 2 across the board. And I'm like, you know what? Do I believe it? Can I defend it? Yes, then I'm going to say it because I'd rather have it said than look back. I think that I have very monumental examples of saying things, not even very, I have 2 monumental in during and post Big Brother of saying something that I feel like I didn't, but I have much more memories of not saying things I wish I had. And so I think that that's for me, the side that I want to err on now is let me speak up and not leave things left unsaid. Because then I don't have to watch it back frustrated. I wish I said this. Even this season, I still have, I have way more of those moments that I don't know if I have any moments. I'm I wish I hadn't said that. I have tons of moments of wow, I wish I had said this. And I want to limit those.
And I want to give you a lot of credit too, because there were certain situations where you could have not held your composure. You could have let out a different side of you, especially in your confrontation with Aesop, not only at the reunion, but on the season as well. And that's one thing I feel like everybody in that alliance, you, Nerys, Horacio, even Zara, you guys are able to compartmentalize the fact of this is a game and it's not actual real life. You might still piss me off, but at the end of the day, it's a game.
Well, and I appreciate the compliment. And I think 2 things I'd say on that is, one is I'm definitely an advocate of or just a huge supporter or whatever. Yeah, I definitely feel like an advocate for the words that people say are I think should be more valuable than is often given credit. A lot of times we, very emotionally, I think this is like where Kyland, like on the spectrum, comes into play and gets frustrated with people because people tend to focus on like how, but this is the general public. So I can't be frustrated with it because it's much more common of people care about like how something's said or how it made them feel or how they interpret it or whatever. But it's just like, when I say I'm not impulsive, like even when I said that to Saf, like it wasn't on the spot. Like I was thinking of this. I was like, okay, if they do this, I'm definitely going to bring this up because, that's why I don't say anything negative. I don't call him a name. I literally just am like, hey, this is something that he said. And I'm just reminding him. And so then you don't often see me jumping into like name calling. You don't, in general, I'm usually like referencing something or saying something. If you look at the actual words that I say very consistently, they are, words that I can stand by and defend. And it might hurt somebody's feelings or be a certain way or whatever, but I think that, we can all be held accountable to the words that we say. And it's just like the example I always do is I was like, if somebody asks me, how does someone I care about feel about what I did? Like, it's one of two answers. It's like, they're either proud of it or they're not proud of it. Either way, it has to do with me doing what I did. It has nothing to do with them. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And so, and then the other thing I was thinking of is just like, and I've said this a lot, but I like to remind people of like, it is a game, and I hold to that. I think better than a lot of people, but I think the analogy that I think of is like MMA. Not that I do MMA, but I love that concept of like, you can kick somebody in the face and tell them that they're a punk, and then the bell rings, and you're like, all right, like I respect you, and we can shake hands and be good. And it's like everything that happens there, but that's really hard to do in this capacity. And I love Wes had like a long tweet about it where he's just like, it is a game, but like we keep calling it just a game. And it's like, most games don't have these stakes. Most games don't have this length of time, this length of emotional, mental, physical investment and risk. And so I understand why it gets to people at these high levels, and I try and give a lot of grace for that. But I think at the same time, I'm just like, let's play the game too. Like, I don't know, a lot of complicated thoughts there.
No, but
makes sense.
I get where you're tracking to on this, because the way I look at it is, especially doing sales and marketing for so long, there's a saying that I go back to, and I probably said earlier, which was, depending on what word you emphasize, this can mean 6 different things. I didn't say he said that, right? So depending on what word you emphasize, it can have a completely different meaning to it. And so words, especially in like a sales situation.
It's so true, though.
I'm going over it. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so true.
So here, and this is, I've done it in sales training. I didn't say he said that. I didn't say he said that. I did say he said that, and you go all the way down. It always means something different.
I didn't say he said that. I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Whatever,
I didn't say that. Yeah, I'm with it. I love it.
Exactly. She said that, you know, it changes it.
So if someone that's in sales, your words mean everything. It's the difference between you eating tonight and not eating tonight in a certain situation. Mm-hmm. But in a game of, and I hate to call it this way, but a lot of reality TV shows like Big Brother and Survivor and The Challenge are games based around lies and deception. And I love lies and deception because it makes an interesting game. What I don't like is the situation that you called out with Berna, where Nerys, or I believe it was Nerys, comes back, or somebody comes back, and Berna comes over and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that," and you're like, if you're so sorry, why'd you vote this way?
Yeah.
Like, those little lies drive me nuts. And it was one of those moments where I was like, yes, Kyland, yes.
He was so excited that episode.
No, I appreciate that, because that was that one where I felt I was just like, how sorry? Like, because I'm just saying a fact. I'm like, if you want a different result, you can act differently next time. If you want to. If you don't want to be in this exact same situation where you're saying sorry again, here's something you can do. Now, you may have other motives that you care about more, and that's okay. But like, me making you confront a truth and not making you feel uncomfortable isn't me attacking you.
Right.
If you're if I'm just holding up a mirror to something that you're doing and it makes you feel bad, don't come at me. Like, come at who you're looking at in the mirror. Like, that's it. And people have trouble with that.
Life's about being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they do. They don't want anybody questioning what they consider a truth.
Right.
Is really what it boils down to.
And that's the other thing is that, like you said, that, these games have a lot of lies and deceptions, because it's like people are like, deceptions and lies aren't necessarily the same thing. And it's like, and people only make that distinction when it's convenient. And they just very easily say, like, hey, like, I didn't say your name. It's just like, yeah, but you pointed at me, or you said, or I had this with Michelle. She's like, I didn't say like your name. And I just was like, yeah, but they said, who can they not go after? And you listed all the names but mine. So that's kind of the same thing. And that's
right.
And that's okay. And so you can maintain that true statement, you didn't lie, but you did deceive. And people do that all the time. And like I said, they just tend to justify it. And it's just like, if it's someone, and both of the fans too, if someone does something that you like, and it's strategic, but if you don't like that person, it's snaky. And deciding what it is it sucks for people. I roll with it because I'm used to it since Big Brother, but you can see people that get so up on this high horse nobility. Like, I don't do that. Like, it's just like, yeah, you do. And that's okay. Like, just own it and acknowledge it. And that's part of it. That is part of it. And that's okay.
100%.
Yeah.
And
it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. We've had the conversation where, like, if we ever end up on one of these shows, you have complete permission to lie to me and get me voted out if it means you win.
Yeah.
I'm completely okay with that.
I'll buy you something pretty when I get home, but you got to go.
I'm game with that. I mean, but, and that's the thing is, in a game of deception, there are going to be feelings that are hurt. And that's, I think, something that we all understand. But, and we'll get a little bit more into that. I wanted to talk to you about this, which is, I'm sure going into this season, you had an assumption that, hey, I'm probably going to see the elimination arena. Did you feel like you were going to see the elimination arena 5 times?
No. But I definitely thought I would at some point. And that's like, eliminations are my favorite part of the game. So it's such a double edged sort of, bittersweet thing, because it is like, anytime watching the show, it's much more common that I see an elimination, like, ooh, I want to try that than daily. And you forget why you're there. And I still feel that way while I'm there. Like, even being in it, it's just like, but I don't, it is, they're always something that's more interesting to me. It's more exciting to watch, more exciting to do. But it was funny because I was making jokes with like Horacio in the first week, where I just was like, I mean, if I do 1, then I might as well do 5, like, and match you. I should have said, like, that's why I forget when I was like, I need to become a more accurate manifester, because I was like, I should have said, I might as well win 5 like you. I said do 5. I remember to say, I might as well win 5 like you. I should have learned that lesson in Big Brother when I journaled in before we went to Big Brother, and I wrote my second to last page. I was like, oh, I'm never going to see the inside of the jury house, which I didn't, because I was 4th, and 4th place onward doesn't get to go to the jury house, but I should have been more specific. And so same thing there. And so I was walking around with Horacio in the first week, and I was like, between me and him, we have 6 elimination wins. And they're like, well, how many do you have? I'm like, well, don't worry, because I had 1 from USA, but I was like, don't worry about that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, between me and him, we have like 11 or something. Like, it was just like a crazy thing. All of a sudden I was like, oh, wait a second. And it was, I think he was also glad. I think both of us are so close yet so competitive that we're like, yeah, if we'd lose to anybody, we'd rather lose to each other than most people. But we'd also would rather lose to Reese than each other. By a lot.
Yeah.
That's the competitiveness.
You guys were the only ones that looked upset if your name didn't get picked when you were down there. It's like you did all the mental prep to go down there, and then like someone else's name gets picked, or it's the chaos, and you're like,
God damn it.
You know what? Besides, maybe the CT one, Horacio looked a little like, okay, all right. Yeah.
No, that is the only one. That was the only one for him. And my only one was the Jordan one, for sure. where I was just, I was on stage. Jordan didn't pull chaos. So that was the only one where I looked at and I was like, I mean, I'd rather not, honestly. It was early in the game too. I don't think I could have held my own, but I was like, yeah, I definitely saw no one besides, and I will conservatively and generously say maybe I think that me would have a chance, but no one besides Horacio was going to give Jordan a run for his money. Like,
no,
no disrespect to Manuel, but he just doesn't have the speed and endurance that Horacio does, and that I think I might too. Just and plus length, I think I have a little bit of a stretch, but that game, was just so intense for him. But yeah, that one for sure. The Brad one, I know me and him were like, I hope I get it. And we're like, no, I want this one. And he's like disappointed. He's like,
Yeah, he looks so upset about that one.
Yep.
Look, the Jordan one, the way he toyed with Kieran
The
on that.
strategy. Oh my God.
Look, there's a reason why I think we all have him up there on the GOAT list. You know what I mean?
he's scared.
I would have liked to see you go against him in that, but I'm glad you didn't because
I would
because I was happy to see you the rest of the season.
I was going to say, do you think you would have?
I just don't know because it was such short rounds, and that's where I'm dangerous. Like me and Horacio, like when we ran in that the eliminations where we have to run to those cubes, like to get to the cubes, maybe 50 yards or something like that. I can like he was like, you passed me. I was like, oh, I know. But I also know that's the only length. I know if we go to 55 yards, he's gone. Like we go any length over that, he's gone. I'll see him later. Like when TJ when I was there with Zara and Horacio, and TJ's like, this is a race. I was like, I'm fucked. I am like, they are both like, Horacio's like a 15-minute 5K and Zara's like a 16-minute 5K. Like they are insane like that running. I was like, it's over. It's over. And luckily he just meant it was a race around the corner. And I was like, oh, thank God. But yeah, but that little bit. So I think very similar to Jordan. Like Jordan, I know his endurance is insane. But those rounds I think were like 60 seconds long. And I'm like, 60 seconds, I'm dangerous. So
is there, like, I'm making a wild assumption here that you would have really liked to go down to elimination with Ace off.
Oh man, depends on the elimination, and not even in terms of like outside of breakdancing competitions. I'm not too worried about him beating me in anything. But
quick question: you know what prime numbers are, correct?
I was gonna say.
I told him what they were during his elimination. I shouted. I was like, "This feels wrong." I was like, "No, I have to explain this to him. This feels wrong." To watch him
say that 10K.
Yeah, but it wasn't even for that. I just was like, let it be fair. But then also somebody was pointing out to me later on, they're like, math is not an English thing. Like that is not the language barrier is not a thing here.
Math is the same in every language.
Good point. So yeah, but that was that was fun. Yeah, he's definitely a talker. But I will say, I hate to give him props, not as a person because he's a fine person, but just like watching him talk so much crap in the game afterwards. Where I'm like, why pretend to be nice and then just talk such a big thing? But he was probably the only person besides me and Horacio that actually was like, you know what, like. This is exciting to go in CT. Like he had obviously, bit off more than he can chew, but he had a legitimate courage about it. Not the competence, but the courage was there. And there's something about that I do have. I'm like, props to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it came down to the situation with Melissa and Asoff when she voted him in, is that something that you kind of saw coming because of the Raven situation with her, Melissa throwing the wine on her and vice versa, Raven throwing the wine back and everything that built up to that?
Well, I saw it as a possibility, like I said, because of the Raven thing. I was basically sitting there, like I said, preparing. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to say to Manuel if he puts me in. And this is what I'm going to say to Asaf if they put in Melissa. And because I figured one of those was an option. We also sat there for 35 plus minutes for them to solve a 6-piece puzzle. DJ was flabbergasted. It got past the point where he was like, all right, I'm done laughing because this isn't funny anymore. This is kind of outrageous. There's 6 pieces in this puzzle that 5 people are working on total, 3 on one and 2 on the other. And it was interesting. So I had a lot of time to think about this. And but I definitely, but I wasn't sure. I genuinely wasn't sure because I was like, you know what? So I've said all this stuff. So like that is a big deal. And Zara had back during the bingo bango, when Zara voted for Melissa, she felt terrible afterwards and was just like, I'm never going to do that again. And that's why like me and Zara, like we had to warm up to each other. Like at the end, and now I love Zaza. Like just talking to her, it was just her birthday 2 days ago, I think, or yesterday. But I love Zaza now. But like we had to warm back up because early on, like that bingo bango thing, she was like, I'm so sorry. Like I shouldn't have given that pressure. I should have held Melissa. You're my girl from the UK. And then, the next week she votes her in again. And I was just like, all right, so that means nothing. But that's just what happens in the game. Sometimes I get it. And then of course, like, So it was, I mean, I'm definitely, I feel pretty good at like understanding, like, I think one thing that helps me in the game strategically is I can even if I'm missing like social cues, I can understand like variability and house dynamics and the odds of things. So like pretty much every single time after the second week, maybe when a team won, I was like, oh, this is who's going in. Like, and I would be talking to other people who are, pretty smart people, and that would be right. And I'd be betting people. I'd be like, yo, this is who's going in, or it's me. Like even when I got called in, when it was Jay, that was the first time that Jay kind of started popping up suspicion on Horacio, because it was Horacio and Jay on the same team with like 6 other people, and Jay was cool with them putting me in, and Horacio was like the only person against them. And but like when teachers like, all right, go over there and deliberate, I was like, you guys don't bother. Like it's me. I can count who's in there. I thought it was going to be 6-2 instead of 7-1. But I knew it was going to be me. So I was just like, guys, why are we wasting this time? Like, let's just go.
Just do this. Yeah,
let's just go.
Fake conversations here. But sorry, I digress. This is like too many things.
No.
You're good.
And it kind of led me into this question, which was when I forget what daily it was that you guys won, and you talked about putting Emmanuel in. Knowing what you know now and how he was connected with Jay and Michelle, do you feel like that was a cornerstone in your game and you would do it differently given the opportunity, or would you have still made the same decision?
No, I did put Emmanuel in. I know I did or I didn't. Oh.
No, you did put him in. Do you think, it seemed like that was kind of almost a turning point of the Jay then being okay with you going in, and then the separation of that alliance?
So no, because it didn't change anything. All it did was it just put out in the open this person who they were working with secretly, they were just working with publicly now. And I think that was the only difference, was that like before, because I actually had asked Olivia, Michelle, Jay, a couple other people. I was like, hey, like, I'm kind of like, because they're kind of talking about like Callum and Emmanuel. I was like, okay, like, is it okay if we target somebody who's an international, because this is early on, something like, even though they'd already put in Chauncey and Raven, I'm like, well, as long as it's not these people. And they're like, yeah, no problem. And then I was like, cool. So then Emmanuel, and then they're like, oh, well, we didn't mean that. And I was like, you guys can't have an opinion after the decision's made. When I asked you beforehand, it was like, is anybody okay? And they're like, yeah, as long as it's not Jay or Horacio or, and Ryan's like, as long as it's not James, I'm fine. And Michelle said like, yeah, as long as it's not Callum, like I'm fine with whoever. And I was like, cool. As long as it's not Callum or Jay, I'm fine with whoever. And I was like, cool. And then everybody had an opinion, like I said, afterwards. And I was like, all right, that doesn't make sense. So all I did, that's all I had to say is that I feel like if anything, it just provided clarity.
It made it public, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also is funny. It also helped me, my position in the game as a viewer, because so many people on social were just like, why didn't you guys target Emmanuel? I was like, well, don't ask the only guy who targeted him at the very first opportunity I had. Don't ask that to me. Like,
Well, and it seemed the way they portrayed the edit is like that was the turning point. And it's interesting to hear that it was more or less like you kind of saw the writing on the wall where it was with the quote unquote US and international alliance and how it wasn't really there. There was a lot of crossover. And let's be honest, if Callum doesn't get picked by Devin randomly, well, maybe not so randomly, in the chaos section, he probably skates to the end of the game with Michelle.
yeah. Yeah. And also I think that because so it was Devin pulls chaos. He had and Emmanuel and who was that? Corey were down there. And it's like I think Emmanuel versus Jordan, Emmanuel versus Devin. Like I think he was going home. So I think it's just like in those challenges at least. So and that was one where he was at risk. And then so it just was like I was like, if you're saved by the literal luck of the draw, that's my thing with Emmanuel. I think has been on him on social is that like I think Emmanuel is a pretty cool competitor. Like I think that I don't think he's the best of us. He's been saying he's the best competitor like ever. I'm like chill a little bit, and that's kind of my only issue with him is I'm like, yo, you are good. You're good at a lot of things, but like you got saved by the draw, and you had this friendship with Michelle and Jay, who happened to be connected to everyone in the house. So like you should just say, I am good, but luckily I had these partnerships with these people and that saved me. And who knows how it would have went differently or whatever. And, don't go the turbo route of just like, I am going to be anybody at anything, anywhere at all times. And it's just like, you have a perfect example of how this comes off. Don't do it, my guy. Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's so true too, because like, first of all, people liked Turbo after his first season when he was with Nani and he won.
Season 1 for sure.
And then he came back on season 2 and it was like everything had just gone to his head and he was an asshole and he thought he was just better than everybody. And now like the fans can't stand Turbo. And unfortunately, Emmanuel's win and his season is already being compared to Turbo's win and his season. And it's like not in a good way. So it's one of those things where it's like,
at least Turbo beat Wes, right?
Yes, he did at least beat Wes. The only thing that like for me, I don't put asterisks next to anybody's win. If you win, you win. And if you won, that means you earned it, you deserve it. I can't take that away. But I also don't like Turbo's win as much because he was
skipping stations.
Yes, I didn't like the format of the final because he was able to skip the two hardest stations of a final, which was the eating and the math. And those are always like the equalizers in the final. That's why I don't personally like that one, but it's not his fault that it was formatted that way. So I can't really hold it against him.
Well, and that's my thing with Emmanuel is if production formats this final right and Nerese wins as the female champion, which we all see her as because there needs to be a male and a female champ.
Yeah.
100%.
People don't have this blowback on Emmanuel.
Right.
But because it's a singular person winning, he's catching a lot of blowback because Nerese came in second. She should have been the female champ. There's, in my opinion,
100%.
That's the asterisk right there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes. On her.
It's the same with John A. and Kellyanne in All Stars 1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They both finished. We would have had 2 winners, but that's a whole nother thing. So I guess my next question into the season, we'll start kind of getting into the end game of it, is when did the real alliance with you and Horacio kind of start off where you guys realized, hey, it's going to be us and Zara pretty much against this house, and we're going to try to pull people in if we can?
I mean, I feel like it definitely was one of those, like, it doesn't happen all at once. Like, I think it happens. And me and Horacio, like I said, we had like a mutual respect and connection, but, he came in there with Jay as his guy. And I think that transition when he's like, wait a second, like,
I want to play, straight up with people who are straight up with me. And this person, Kyland, continues to be straight up with me. And these other people are not. So I guess like if these other people are already conspiring against me and conspiring against the people and lying to my face about it, then I can't trust them anymore. And so I think that just happened over time. And then Zara was just, smart enough to see what and Raven eventually, another thing, Zara and Raven, I think that's my other issue is like on social, there was like a lot of commentary. People randomly be like, yo, you should have grabbed Raven and Zara like earlier. And I was like, I started talking to them in like week 2 about this, like 2 weeks in, which was like 4 episodes in. I was like, hey, by the way, like, we should probably start working together, sort of deal or whatever. And even after Melissa left, I remember telling Raven about this, and she was still like holding on to some stuff. And then they both of them have said how like, I should have both, not even just them, like other people too have been like, yeah, we probably should have started working with you guys sooner or at all. And so, yeah, I think that but shout out to Zaza for sure, because she was one of the people that moved quickly. And, she was winning the most dailies of, I think, any other female in the house. At one point, she had the most, her and I think Raven had the most dailies of everybody in the house, guys and girls. Yeah. And they, and so I think that I give them a lot more excuses than I do Colleen and Ed, because it shielded them from finding out how unsupported they were because they were safe. And so they were just like,
well, and I think, yeah, if it wasn't for the purge, Ed would have found out real quick how expendable he was before that final.
Yeah.
Because Jay's not going to want to bring him in there.
No, yeah. I wouldn't want to run a final against him.
No, absolutely not.
And they already voted for him twice, so I don't think doing it a third time would have had any hesitancy.
That's what killed me about it. That's I said some things about Ed after
you
that
were
episode.
So mad.
But it was just like, bro, they voted for you twice. You had to cause a stalemate to stay out of the fucking elimination. And then the next week, you're like, you know what? I'm going to rock with you guys.
I'm going to save you.
Let's run it back. Run it back right now.
Yeah, let's run it back. And you know what? Let's also put into elimination 3 of the 4 people who voted in my favor.
Yes, exactly. Because that's the way to go.
Anyways, yeah. So one thing I did want to bring up, and it's something that you had mentioned, is that when you confronted the confrontation with Jay that happened in the kitchen after Aesop got eliminated, and it seemed like it was a lot of misunderstanding of the situation that happened at that point. That Jay took it as you were laughing about Aesop getting eliminated.
Crying about, about his kids and his wife. Sorry, I was just helping you out there. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. I need all the help I can get. Really, I mean, at the end of the day, I want to leave it up to you and what was going on in that situation.
Yeah. So after the elimination, like right after, Asaf is crying out about like he felt guilty about losing. Like he's a competitor. He felt guilty about losing. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mom, and I don't know if he was saying mom or his family or whatever. And and it was emotional. It was sad. It was like a sad scene for everybody. And I was like, oh wow, like this is that is sad. I mean, I'm glad that he's gone, but that's sad. And then so that happens. Minutes pass by. People are emotional, but like it's already over. Like that he's done crying out. He's doing it because we're on stage for, like I said, there's a lot of waiting. And so we're on stage, and me and Rossi are talking. We're on to the next thing. And we're just talking about like the game. We're like, wow, like that was crazy how many people were crying for Rossi or for Asaf. Honestly, this is probably a better scenario for us to eliminate somebody who even more people than we knew may have cared about. That's crazy that it worked out this way. And like we're talking about that and other stuff, and we like are laughing about stuff in the game, and Jay, I think, was just sensitive about his friend leaving, and just decided to project that on us and make it something that he could justify. And it's just like, oh, you know, you're laughing about this. And I was like, no, that's not it. And that was my thing too, where I was saying like almost being too nice in the sense of, I was like, you know what? He's sad. I like him. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then, so that's why I go to Michelle and I was like, honestly, he's sad. I'm not gonna, my words can cut deep, because I'm not as emotional. And I was like, Jay's not a person that I have a personal beef with, in real life. So I don't want to hurt his feelings. So let me just go and talk to Michelle and tell her to go calm him down.
Yeah.
And, go check your boy. And, but then I see him in the confessionals. He's like, you know, if things get physical, they have to get physical. And I'm like, my guy, like, chill, like, I didn't know you were puffing your chest like this.
He can't afford to get that wig pushed any further back.
I was gonna say, look, I like Jay on a personal level, but Jay, you don't want that, bro. That's not what you want to do, bro. Okay,
Well,
just go sit down and be mad. It's fine.
I was just proud that you didn't hit him with like, now you know what it feels like to lose someone you're close to in this game. Welcome to the club, Jay.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I can hurt your feelings, but yes, I think, I think in general, that's something that I feel is I'm just like, I will hurt somebody's feelings without, you know, calling them a name. And I think that is, so I try not to do that because I don't like to do that. But yeah, that was, I just, like I said, I didn't know how people were being.
Yeah, no,
100%.
that's actually a good point, and it brings me to a question that I've been dying to ask about the. I know we keep jumping all over this season, sorry, but about the elimination that you and Horacio and Nerys end up in, where Michelle had picked Olivia and then Olivia picked Mariah, which, you know, obviously caused the whole ripple effect, which put you three in the bottom. And I know that when we had first started talking about this season, you had said that Olivia was your like number one from day one when you were going into the season. She promised to have your back. You have her back. You guys were in a tight alliance and she was your closest ally. Now, we know where the relationship with Olivia and Nerys has gone since that moment and where Olivia and Horacio's relationship has gone since that moment. I'm curious, where do you and Olivia sit these days?
If I hear from her, I'll let you know. I mean, I think that was after the show is really good, actually, to be honest, like, because I am so much of the, you know, separating the game and the thing. So like, I was like, and she knew she didn't, you know, want to defend her decision. She was like, she messed up and she knew that. And she didn't really have backtracking on it, or she wasn't defensive about it. So I was like super graceful about it. And we saw each other like as recently as like a week, a day or two before the episode came out. And then the episode came out and I sent her a message that was just like, hey, you know, I'm glad I saw you before watching the episode, because watching it does bring back all the feelings. But I know that if I look at this moment where I know someone I care about is receiving so much hate, and I don't reach out and say something, you know, positive and remind you that, like, you know, you're of positive things about you, I would regret it. And so I want to make sure I do that. And then her and I talked maybe a couple more times, and then maybe a week later or something like that. And I understand why, but I feel like maybe all of the social media and guilt and hate and stuff, which is way out of hand and excessive. And I hate that about this environment, but it's just part of it. So it's, you know, it just is a reality for us. And I've been on that side of it. And so it's like, I think that it got overwhelming for her and she did retreat into like some defensive things. And so she did her podcast with her sister, and she basically just like downplays the relationship that she had with Horacio and Nerys. And it was her. That was where I was like, all right, I can't make excuses for you anymore, because now you're making excuses on your own. So now I can't make, and you're making excuses that like we've already talked about aren't real excuses and aren't genuine. And so it's like, or I'm not saying the things you're saying aren't genuine, but some of them, I think more, like I said, the stuff with Horacio, because it's like, you can't spend the whole season saying like, this person's not supporting me as my best friend. And then be like, oh, wait, no, we weren't really best friends. It's just like, which one is it?
Yeah.
Which one is it? Like, then why were you upset? And so, but I understand. I think she said it because that's the thing that sucked, is we would have conversations and she would catch herself doing it. Or I would call her out on it and she'd be like, you know what? I am being defensive or I'm making an excuse. So I know she has it in her. And so I think it just hurts. It's not like I'm cutting her off. Like I said, my phone's been open. I haven't heard anything since that podcast came out. And I think that she, maybe because she knows that she said some things that like she shouldn't have. And she retreats into herself. And you know what? And I hold grace for that too. Like I mean it. Like I do hope to hear from her. I think my hurt has now pushed me to a place where like I don't feel an immediate need to be the one to reach out again that I have before. And so, but I do hope best for her and I care about her and I and I understand for her, everyone's going to process. It's a lot to process. Like when you have that level of, like I said, like I did experience. And so everybody has their own way about it. And maybe hers is retreating into herself, and we'll see. Time will tell if she dives deeper into that defensiveness or comes back to the other side of it.
Okay, so I have two questions. I want to get to this one first, though, just because you brought it up. If you were going to give her one piece of advice, because like you said, you've gone through it, and I'm assuming that you're referring to the confrontation that you and Xavier had on Big Brother 23, right?
Yes.
What's one piece of advice you would give her to dealing with what the backlash she's getting?
I feel like it is kind of stuff that we have talked about in terms of like, it's not just the accountability. And like I said, there's been moments where she's done so good at it. And then she'll like add on a sentence that walks it back. And I'm like, just don't add on that sentence. Just stop talking a little bit sooner. Like for anybody taking accountability, I think it's like, if you find yourself saying, but, or, an alternative for but, people are popular, like, oh, it's not but, and also, or whatever. It's just like, just stop the sentence there. Stop the sentence where you still feel bad. If you hit the release valve, if you're saying something and you're like, oh, because this makes me feel a little bit better in that sentence, it's probably not the right thing to say. So I
100%.
think that is a little bit more of the harsh thing. I think that the more optimistic thing that I would say is just like, I don't know if somebody told me this or if I read it or what, but for me after Big Brother, a sentiment I remember having in my head was that, I'm never going to tell people about who I really am, but I can show them with consistency. And so I think that same thing. Like, I think that there's a lot of good, like so much good, overwhelmingly good in someone like Livia. I know she's a very caring person. I'm like, like, don't try and convince everybody about that good and refer to that moment. Instead, just leave that moment as it is. Talk about it as is with the apologies, without the buts, without the release valve thing I was talking about. But then just show moving forward, show individuals in real life. And like and don't worry. And like, that's the thing that I just didn't engage like with unconstructive, like negative feedback on social or anything like that. It was much more like, I'm just going to be me and keep showing people. And it's funny because you do that enough and then everybody's just like, what are you going to say anymore? Like nobody can say anything about it anymore. Cause it's just like, they're just like, oh, I had one of my number one, like comments on like TikTok and socials, like, I didn't really like you, but now I can't say anything about you. I do like you a lot. I've become a fan or whatever. And it's just like, because I didn't argue with them. I just was like, let me just be me and consistently and let people see.
And I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's, the best apology for being accountable is, I'm sorry, I fucked up. Right there. That's all. That's being accountable right there. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
No buts or ends, like you said. And I think it did speak a lot to the friendship you and Olivia had, which was the conversation you guys had right after that vote, because you were very candid with her about that situation.
Oh, yeah.
And
I loved that moment.
I know we got an edited version of that conversation, and I want to give you the opportunity to kind of put out there what was actually said in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, so it was actually sad is, I was definitely hurt, but I just was like, but I knew that the hurt in Horacio and Nerys was so much more because of their tighter relationships. And I definitely just felt compelled. I was like, hey, like I said, for me, I know it's a game. I'm gonna get over it. I was hurt, but I knew I was gonna get over it. And I knew that she, regretted it or whatnot. And I definitely felt like protective of Nerys and Horacio, especially Nerys. And was just like, hey, like, I get you want to talk to her. Don't cry if you go talk to her, because there's no room for that, and you don't have that, not even the luxury, but just like it would be further selfish for you to do that. So if you want to talk to her, make sure that you wrap that up soon. And their conversation, you could see their first conversation, she doesn't cry, and I was like, good, like that's what I told her, and it is more of exactly what we said. It's just like, hey, there's only two options for that decision. The option number one is that like you knew about it and you made a decision against her actively, which sucks, but like that's the game and that's okay. Or you didn't know, and to not know that she wouldn't be safe is stupid. So like either you did something stupid or you did something actively against her, and whichever one it is, it is what it is. But that was I think, and that's why they actually didn't show it. It's like probably the one of the bigger confrontations while we were actually down there making that vote was me kind of yelling at Jay, or not yelling at Jay, but just confronting him about that. And because that's when I was like, what did you think was going to happen? TJ, and that's why he popped in. He's like, what did you think was going to happen? And then he's like, oh, Corey was supposed to save her. And I was like, and who was supposed to save Corey? Because if you walk down that line, you're not going to say something that makes sense. And you know that. And that's why I was pissed that Berna hops in, because I was like, I wanted him to answer the rest of the questions because he was not going to have an answer. And I was just like, that was my issue with with him saying like, oh, I want to support her. I'm like, I'm not saying that you wanted her in elimination. I'm saying that you did not do sufficient actions to prevent her from being in elimination. So, and you can't say that you did. And you can't, because you're too smart. You understand the game too much. You understand these people too much to say that you didn't want to do that. It's just like, you're dumb or you acted on purpose, and we all know you're not dumb.
It's like that movie. It's from Casino, where it's either you were in on it or you were too stupid to work here. Yep. One of the two. You know what I mean?
And both are bad.
Yeah. Both, what do you want to be, an asshole or stupid? What are we doing?
Either way, you're losing in this. And and like my thing with Olivia is, look, this game's built on deception, like we've said. Yeah. I mean, Johnny takes Sarah's money, like probably one of the worst things you can do to another person on this game show, is win all that money. Same with Ashley and Hunter.
And not split it.
And not split that money, right?
Yeah.
And there's other things that are on a more personal level. But my biggest gripe against Olivia is she had the whole fan base behind her, like almost unanimously going into this season and through most of the season. I caught a lot of shit saying, no, this is Olivia's fault. If she feels a certain type of way, she needs to go talk to Horacio, not the other way. He's not one of those people that's going to be like, oh, I got you every 10 seconds. He's not that dude.
Yeah.
You took so much heat for having Olivia's back. You took for not having Olivia's back. Yeah.
But she could have made a move that would have made her a legend in the game in that moment, and she missed it.
Legendary. And she was already on the edge of fan favorite. Like you said, the last season, she wins Love Island. She's America's sweetheart from that other one. And I think that's why it hit her so hard. I think that is why she has made some of those mistakes, like with the backtracking, because it's such a drastic fall for her. And that's why I have so much sympathy for it, because mine was a fall, but I didn't experience that high first.
Right.
So it was, so I get it, but it would have been so epic. And then also it was one of those things where it's the only other people that she cared about in the game, not counting any of the three of us, still would have been safe.
Right.
So she's like, Jay, she was saying in one conversation, people don't realize how close I was to Jay and Michelle. It's they were safe. They were already safe. So even if you're saying that your relationships with Horacio and Nerys were secretly 3 and 4 and not 1 and 2, and that was just and Jay and Michelle were 1 and 2. It's like, okay, how does counting work? 1, 2 are safe. What's after 2? 3. So then it would be them 2.
Well, and my thing was after you.
Epic.
After Nerys, yourself, and Horacio would have been picked, the rest of the order wouldn't have really mattered. So if she really wanted to like save the girls and save Mariah, she could have just been like, "Hey, Kyland."
Mariah still would have been safe in every scenario.
Yeah, hey, Kyland, grab Mariah after you get picked up.
Yeah,
I'm gonna flip this shit on them. I'm gonna make sure we're all safe.
And I would have probably picked James just for fun.
Right.
He would pick Mariah.
Kyland's gonna do it too.
Mariah would have been fine, so it would have been fine.
I was going to say, you're going to make me keep my subtitles on for one more week.
Oh my God, you and your subtitles with James.
I'm just saying, he mumbles so much.
Well, James, because Mariah would have picked James and James would have picked Mariah. So
that's true.
They would have been like, save Mariah, but like, James. But then he'd save Mariah, which is fine.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And I agree. I think that's where some of the reason she did that podcast instead of just let it lie was the fact that it was a fall from grace. No other way to slice it. She went from could have been one of the most legendary players, loved, to wow.
She literally could have been the female CT, like can do no wrong. If she would have just made the right move in that moment, fans would have rode with her for the rest of forever. Just based off that one moment. Because that's what they do with CT. Like, he could make any mistake he wants, but Banana Backpack happened, and we will not forget about it. You know what I mean? Like,
he just earned a whole new litany of fans by looking at Horacio and saying, I was in your situation a lot. You know what I mean? I respect it.
I'm going to give you the night off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, so good.
Okay.
So good.
So before we get into these last couple eliminations and kind of wrap up, one thing I did want to ask about, because you were there in person and was able to see it. Did Michelle physically piss her pants when Laurel came out?
Oh my God.
Because it looked like it on television.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So here's what's crazy is like, she was freaking out about her like the night before even. We had a whole argument because I'm such like a literal person. She was like, I know for fact Laurel's going to come and pick Chaos and pick me. I was like, that's not how facts work. But I'm with, like I hear what you're saying, but that's not how things. That's not a fact, or how knowing works. Anything. So we get there though. So I knew she was terrified, but I knew she was scared or whatever. And she was telling me she's scared after. So after the pick happens, they remove us from the stage to go backstage, so that way we don't see them set up the rest of remove the draw and set up the elimination. Most of it's set up, but they have to remove the draw and stuff. So we go off stage, and I check with Michelle because, like, on a personal level, we're close. And I was like, "Hey, see, you're fine. Didn't I tell you? Like, it's not a fact. Like, that's not how it is." And so she's like, "Feel my heart," and I like felt her heart. It was probably one of the loudest, strongest heartbeats I've ever felt. It was
oh my god,
wow,
so hard. Like I can't like whatever you're thinking. It was more than that, and she's such a small person, so it was like even bigger, and like it was so intense. And I was like, maybe she did. I don't know, because it was so intense. I felt bad. Like I was like, oh my gosh, you were terrified. She's like, yeah.
You could see it on her face. Like,
oh yeah.
Look, you can mask a lot of emotions, and that type of fear is not easily masked. And
Laurel is scared.
Dude, I would be scared of Laurel if she came in. She's like, you blue plaid shirt, I'm gonna rip your head off. I'd be like, oh shit, I'm gonna die tonight.
I'm gonna die tonight.
You know?
Kind of, yes. I think Bananas had like a interview when he's like, yeah, if you're like wrestle this bear or Laurel, I'm like, give me the bear every time. Like, please.
Yeah. Well, and look, I'd put it to the equivalent of, for Michelle, it would be the equivalent to me of CT coming in and being like, I want him in a hall brawl. And I'd be like, fuck.
I'm done.
Call
in a pole wrestle, like
have the ambulance ready.
Right.
I'll be out here in about 30 seconds, you know. So all right, getting into these final 3 eliminations, there's a couple things that I was curious about. One of which was Do you think you had the right strategy as far as when you guys were going against Nerys with you and Horacio going to the same puzzle instead of going to the balance beam first?
Yes, I think it was one of those things where, and that's why I was like, that was my only holdout is the, which I did observe in the first elimination that we did with the three of us, with me, Zaza, and Horacio. I was like, oh shoot, Horacio's good at puzzles, and everyone thought that he was just physical, and he's really good. That tangram set that stumped both of us, he was even more stumped. Like he was just when he was there at the end, he was not solving it. He was just like moving pieces around, just like, I don't know how to do this. He basically was like waiting for one of us to finish. And probably Nerys is who we guessed, but I only say that from my ego because I did finish the chains, and I just didn't bring the flag back, but I did just finish the chains. And I could have taken it after that, but right when I finished the chains and Nerys finished, I was like, well, I'm not gonna race her back so I could have 2 flags and she wins. So I'd rather just clap for her. But yeah, so for that one though, it was really just maybe, I think going to that station first, I feel good about. Maybe if I took that break and went with Horacio, that could have made the difference, because maybe it's one of those things where I just needed a fresh look. I think I was very much, I caught in my head on the tangram puzzle, which like wasn't even a pressure thing. It was just kind of an off day. Like, I think that, you know, for puzzles, like I have certain strategies in place that normally work really well. And when I walked through what I was doing, I wasn't doing those strategies at the time. And I also was just in a different mindset because they said shape puzzle, and I thought it was going to be like all the other challenge puzzles where they use the shapes and you just have to fill in a square or a block or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was a fill-in puzzle. And I was like, got that, do those in my sleep. And it's funny, I have like tangram sets that I like, well, they never do these. They just do the ones where you have to fill in a shape. So let me practice those ones. And I have so many of those ones that I practice. And that one, I was like, I've skipped this shape so many times, but I think I can figure it out. And there was one tricky piece that I kept doing, but then there was one piece at the top that it wasn't even a tricky piece that I just got stuck on. And yeah, so I think maybe to the fresh eyes I might have benefited from. Yeah, I don't know. As far as I think that was more than the order even. But who knows? Nerys is a beast.
No,
massive props to her. Yeah.
My next question is, and it kind of leads into that elimination, is that first one you went into with Horacio and Zara. Zara does the mud pit and then tries to climb the wall and struggles with that. And then in the following eliminations, we see that they put like little ladders on the wall.
Yep.
Do you think that was the equalizer to it? Because as much as Zara struggled?
Yeah, I think so. As it should be. I think they should have the equalizers. You know, if you're going to compete men and women together, I think that you got to do a better job with equalizing. And we saw them in the final. I don't think they did a good job there.
Agreed.
No,
Agreed.
100%. Yeah, there was.
I think they made good efforts compared to War of the Worlds 1 and Vendettas, where it was, you know, only one single winner. I think they made a lot of improvements from those two formats, but I think that there's still like a lot of room to grow if they're going to do single winners.
Even I agree. World Worlds, yeah, they didn't do as good a job. I think they did a similarly poor job. But like Vendettas, the weights were proportional. Like when they had to wear the armor or do the other thing that like Cam and Carr were doing, like, or whoever it was, they had sections where like the weights were switched up. In this one, they didn't. They were doing the exact same as the men in everything, in weight and moving stuff. And they had, you know, 2 women paired together competing against 2 men in physical things. Like, it was not very, like, the efforts that were put forth, were not equalized.
Yeah.
100%. And, okay, so I have one final question about eliminations. I know you might have a couple that I haven't gotten.
I have one question about the elimination.
Okay, well,
that's it, but you could go first.
Okay, so we saw you in 5 eliminations this season. Obviously, 2 of them were pretty much the same, just different puzzles. That out of all of your eliminations that you did this season, 2 of which included beating former champions in Brad and Darrell, which one meant the most to you?
Oh, I mean, probably. So I feel like there's some badass pictures of the Darrell one with the fire, but I think that the strongest memory will probably be the Brad one because it was like, because it was, so we started that elimination, 11:30 or something like that. So by the time we finished, it was 11:50 on July 12th, and my birthday is July 13th. So that was kind of cool. Is like we were going into my birthday. One of the producers had mentioned this might be the tallest structure that we've ever built in an elimination arena, as far as like something that someone's standing on top of. Yeah. And so standing at the top of potentially the highest that anyone's ever stood in an elimination arena on the challenge on my birthday, they kept me up there. They brought down Brad first. They kept me up there so we could like sing for my birthday. Right after winning, right after beating a second champ in the challenge. In something that was physical, and to have a pretty solid showing in it. I think that's a pretty cool like new core memory, I think, for sure.
Hell yeah.
I love it. And I loved you talking a little bit of shit to Jay when you won too. It's always that nice little sprinkle on it. And, no, that is an awesome memory. And look, regardless of what may or may not happen in the future with the challenge, not too many people can say that they've beaten Brad and Darrell in an elimination, let alone in the same season.
So true.
That's a hell of a notch.
No, it's pretty cool.
The only question I had left about the elimination was the one against Horacio and Nerys. And it's in my opinion, it's a really stupid question, but I have to ask it. Otherwise, we're going to get ate up by the fans that listen, which we really don't care. But
oh, yes,
there is a lot of speculation going around that there was a deal made between you and Horacio to throw this elimination to Nerys. And I would just like to give you the floor to say what you would like to say about that situation, because I personally don't believe that for a second. So I would like to give you the floor for that.
Completely true. No, I'm just kidding. No.
It's exactly what 100%. Goku would do. Exactly what Goku would do.
Right?
Yeah. No, it was very much not true. I think that like you have to just go from not just the competitive element amongst ourselves, but also there was nobody in that house that any of us wanted to win. So we were very much like, okay, we have to try our best to make sure that we give one of the three of us the best possible chance to win. And the only way that we can do that fairly is just try our best and win. And so when, from a roster standpoint, like each one of us feels very confident about like our abilities, especially compared to the rest of the house.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, no disrespect, but maybe full disrespect. I don't know. But like, it was just like each one of us independently felt like, well, we would have the best shot to beat all of those people in a final. And if anybody, because finals are so notorious for running, like Horacio may have felt the strongest that way. And so, it was, even when we thought like maybe there were two winners, like Nerys was talking about like, hey, I'll just let you two come back because I think that you two have a best shot of backing each other and taking out these other people. And so that was a conversation. And then I think once we saw it was one winner, we're like, absolutely not. Like there's no, and that was like a conversation that was had, not a conversation we arrived with or
right.
had concluded with. But it was going back to manifesting. It was funnier though, because Nerys spent so much time like doubting herself, and the whole day we were just like, Nerys, you can beat either of us. Nerys, you could be either one of us anytime. Like you got to believe that. Like we spoke that into existence so strongly by repeating it again and again, like an incantation. And then, and then we got there and said it, and it just was like, and something that I've said that like as a friend I think was so cool is that like even if people ask me like what was the most meaningful eliminations of all of them,
that's probably the second most meaningful, even though I lost, just because it was the fan in me. It's an epic moment. Like after he's beat us, it's like Leo, and then just on a friend level, I've said it before, and I think Nerys beating us in that elimination probably did more mentally, like confirming her to be as good as we already knew she was, like reminding herself of that, proving that to herself, than would have mentally happened for Horacio or myself winning the final. Like,
right.
Of course, it'd be amazing and beautiful. And it's not like we're coming in cocky, like, oh, we can absolutely do it. But like the fact that she was doubting herself so hard and then beats both of us, like for my friend, someone I care about so much, to have that level of like confidence, like restored in herself, was solidified to that level. That's meaningful and priceless, and something I'm happy happened. I'm not happy to lose, but I'm happy for that outcome for her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, I won't lie. I was very sad to see you and Horacio go this season. But it was definitely like such a powerful moment. It was such a win for her, for women on the show, for women everywhere. Absolutely. All the women watching were so happy. I know every freaking female challenge fan was cheering in that moment, whether they like Nerys or not, So it was just such a powerful moment. And the fact that you and Horacio fed into that by cheering for her, and just being happy and not being, salty about losing, which I know is easy to be in that moment, especially when you're so competitive. But to, put those feelings aside and just be there for her as a friend. And even though you were the one she beat, be happy for her that she beat two awesome competitors and won. And it was just so perfect. Everything about it. I loved it.
Well, it's the genuine smile that yourself and Horacio both had as you guys kind of the realization of, okay, she's winning. I mean, Horacio was working on the puzzle, but every time they cut over, he was just like watching Nerys.
He's just like love struck.
Yeah. And then as you see her climbing out and running towards it and you're clapping and cheering for her, it was just a great moment to watch.
I just got goosebumps again. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a phenomenal one.
It was awesome. And it's like, and the edit did me a kindness for sure, because I definitely, not in terms of like the support and clapping, but like after, so we finish, and then before we go in front of TJ, they're like setting up cameras for that moment. So the three of us are just sitting off to the side, and the loss hit me for sure then. And I'm sitting there bawling pretty much. And Nerys is like holding me because she's just so sweet. And she's like, no, like, yeah. Like, and I was like, yo, like, I'm happy for you. Like, none of these tears are like against you. And she was like super understanding of that, obviously. And, but yeah, I mean, it's an emotional moment for sure. I mean, you don't want to lose. And so, especially after like the road that was had. And so, but it was, but I mean, everything, the connection between us three was really cool, because on the flip side, the other thing that they didn't show, was how after TJ said there was one winner, the three of us before starting sat together and strategized on like, okay, here's these puzzles. Make sure you save the mud. Like we strategized together, and because that's just how close we were. And I think that's, I think it seems like it did come through, which was really cool to watch.
That's actually interesting, because we had like a whole discussion when we recapped that episode, and we were like, I wonder if they gave her a heads up of like what the elimination looks like, because there was that moment when you guys start and she runs around the corner and she sees the boxes and she goes, oh, fuck. And I was like, oh, so they didn't tell her. At least they didn't tell her about the boxes.
No, we did. I think she just didn't anticipate how big the boxes were. Yes, we definitely told her everything. Yeah.
Well, looking at it, let's say Olivia does make the legendary move and says Nerys' name, and she says Horacio says you. You guys skate to the final, because the following challenge, yes, was 100% me, Horacio. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys would have won that.
I mean, James looked like a toddler learning how to walk and stayed up there second longest. I mean, yes. You were Horacio.
Michelle just held on and just sat there.
Bless her heart.
I died.
That one was hard to watch. That was the hard. I was like, oh.
And I was like, honey, put your feet down, please. You're going to fall.
And And honestly, I mean, like, let's say Corey and Emmanuel still make the final somehow. I mean, I think Corey's maybe your only competition, but that's before I saw him on the balance beam. You know what I mean? And that kind of lost that. I mean, I think Corey's got a lot of potential and can be really great at this game. But he's a big guy, and long distances are hard on big guys. We've seen it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And not to say that you're not a bigger guy too, but
He's for sure a couple inches taller than me.
yeah, he's like 6'4" or something like that. He's crazy.
I think so. Yeah, like 6'4". Maybe. We might be close in weight, but he's definitely bigger than me. Like yeah, I'm 6'1", about at the time maybe like 220, 218, something like that, and he was probably 230, 235. I think maybe. I know for sure taller.
Yeah, but I still don't see anyone beating you guys. I mean, I still think it comes down to you three at the end. And Nerys proves that by coming in first for the women.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't close. Like,
and she had no allies. So, like, imagine her in the final with allies. Like, I think that, who knows? She might have still beat us, and it might have been Nerys and then the last one me or something. Like,
oh, yeah. And well, I mean, like, and the closest thing she had to an ally was Corey and helping each other at that one part of the puzzle.
Right.
I mean, that seemed like the only person that was remotely close with her at all.
And she definitely had some of the worst possible pairings for specific challenges. Like when she was talking about it, I couldn't see it, but then when I watched it, I was like, if you had to pick the worst partner for these two events, you had that person. And that is frustrating, I'm sure, when it's just like kind of literal luck of the draw thing. It's like, oh man, like.
Yeah, like nobody wanted Mariah on that paddling section. We saw what happened with those paddle boards. And
or
everything.
Colleen on the, where you had to do the boxes, the one where Nerys had to pretty much do the whole thing by herself, you know, like nobody, was messed up. I hated that checkpoint.
Taking a look at everything, you've had the experience on Challenge USA. Now you've had the experience on the flagship with Challenge Battle for a New Champion. If they asked you to come back and do another flagship, would it be something you're open to? Oh, yeah.
It's the coolest thing ever. Like, I love it so much, and I feel like so fortunate to have gotten a taste of this world at all. And I mean, you know, I look at the bananas or the Mark Longs, and I'm like, how long can I go? I mean, I just did a Spartan race this week. Me and Horacio Nerys and some of his friends from Mexico flown last week. And my dad came too. My dad just turned 60 and he crushed it. And so I'm like, all right, the genes are there. I see these guys doing it. I'm like, how long does this show want to go? Because I'd like to go with it.
Right.
I love to hear that. That's awesome.
Okay, I have a hypothetical for you. Obviously, the producers would never do this, but let's suspend belief
Love it.
And say, Kyland, we're going to be doing a rival season. And as we all know, their theme seasons don't always fit the theme of present time, right? I'll leave it at that. But
yes.
They say, we want you and Xavier as a pairing for Rivals 4. Are you guys winning that season?
Oh my God. Yes. I mean, that is insane. Like, wow. I need, like, we need another soundbite so I can talk about how much I hate Xavier. He's the worst works never. Producers, I hope that I'm never paired with him because I would constantly fight. It would be a I don't know, lots of drama, guys.
Lots of drama.
So much drama would occur. Oh my gosh.
It'd be like Amanda and Tori, but worse.
Yeah.
But worse. Yes. More intense. Yes. So that is, wow. Talk about, I can't. I'm like he's such a well-rounded competitor as well. Like I think that if he didn't get injured, it would have been really interesting to see if him and some of these seasons are engaged, because now he's like, this environment doesn't seem like the best place for a young, newly married man, and
probably not.
And not even like in terms of him, like he has, as we saw, great self-control of his emotions in general, but I think just why put yourself in a situation where other people are going to do something that could be offend your partner or whatever. I think that that's his mindset, and which is unfortunate because that would be quite a scenario for sure.
Yeah.
Look, low key, I've been kind of rooting for that since I saw you guys both on Challenge USA.
Mhm.
Oh man,
I think you guys getting stuck with the algorithm screwed him a little bit. You know what I mean?
It screwed everybody.
It
though.
screwed everybody,
Yeah.
and everybody was at the same disadvantage. But yeah, no, and we've been talking for a while. Watching you guys on Big Brother was a real treat. Same with Tiffany and
Oh,
Derek
yeah.
and Hannah and the whole nine, Ozza as well. Which I know we didn't even get into, but the fact that you got Not So Fast as your very first elimination and killed it with Ozza, who we know had literally like 6 days prep to get out to USA.
Amazing.
It, I think speaks volumes on your competitiveness and how good you can be at this game.
thank you, I appreciate that.
100%. Okay, so I really am kind of running short on questions. I know we've eaten up about 3 hours of your time combined already.
Total.
love it.
Which we tend to do. I'm sure if you talk to Horacio, he told you we did the same thing to him.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't tell Nerese that we're going to try to do
please.
the same thing with her.
Hey, I'm sure she has plenty to say. And she was just like, she actually mentioned, she's like, I said I wasn't going to do more podcasts, but these guys are supportive of me, and I appreciate that. And they've been supportive of her. She commented on you, so I was like, cool.
Aw, I love her. We actually just made her a custom design hoodie
that's so
and
nice.
sent it out to her. So
Yeah.
she's so sweet. I
Look,
love her.
I've got a lot of belief in Nerese when I saw that she ended Nelson's daily losing streak. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like, okay, this girl's something else. She's not just a target model.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and so very impressive to see how well she did on her second season too. But
Yeah.
okay, so this is my stereotypical question I ask every guest we have on here. And even though you're newer to the challenge as far as a competitor, you've done a lot of your homework. So I'm really excited to hear your answer on this. Challenge Mount Rushmore for men, for women. Who are you putting on there? It doesn't have to be the best, but who's your Mount Rushmore?
Oh, okay. On the women, I mean, Laurel, Cara, probably Ashley, to be honest. And
Ooh.
just numbers wise, she has freaking numbers. Amount of challenges compared to the wins. And I was also taking into account what you said about like overall like fandom, not just competitor wise, because I'm like, she also brings a lot of fun.
Yes.
And I think Casey's one of the most well-rounded competitors, but doesn't have the track record that like a Tori has right now. And I will say, I definitely don't have. I didn't watch I don't have the personal attachment to a lot of the old school players. So there might be some old school players that like I'm missing that people are going to be devastated for. And I know, a lot of online people don't like Tori, but I don't know. Tori has shown a lot of fight and promise since her first season. So I want to give her that credit, and she did get the win. So yeah, I think those four. And on the guys, I mean, CT, Johnny, Jordan.
It's always that fourth spot. Yeah.
No, it's always the fourth one. And so I think the fourth, is like, it's like Darrell and Wes. Like Darrell has that stab, that 4 in a row. It's always iconic. But then I think Wes's recent win might give him that edge. I think that his recent win, and he kind of is a little bit of an innovator in this space, the same way you have like maybe the Dan Gieslings or the Dr. Will. I think even more Dr. Will than a Dan Giesling for like a Wes of being an innovator and adding gameplay that is not traditionally and still not often seen in the challenge. And he was like, you know what, let's bring in a little bit of more strategic, gameplay into this environment. And I give him props for that for sure. And he's somebody I haven't gotten to meet, but I think very highly of as pretty much all those guys. Actually, Johnny's the only person I've really met out of all 4 of them. But
Oh wow.
that's what I think. That's what I feel good about in this moment.
I like it.
I like it. I think you can't really argue that list.
Yeah.
I know mine is different. If it's, am I picking the best or am I picking who means the most to me as a viewer, right? And that's
very true.
But there is some overlap there. I mean, Jordan and CT are on both sides of that list, regardless.
Yes.
But no, it's so difficult too, because like, you know, myself, it's like, how do I not put Coral on that list? You know what I mean? And she's super old school.
Okay, yeah. See, I knew there'd be some, yeah.
But I think what you're saying about Wes is what rings true for me, is that he's won in 3 very separate timelines of the challenge. He's won in that early duel stage. He won in Rivals 2, considered middle of that golden era. And then winning in All Stars 3, which is more of a common era, even though it was against traditionally more old school players, even though Naya, Kayla, and John A were on there. But
right.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Sorry, I could just like all of a sudden start running down the analytics, and it's not a fun game.
No. I'm with you. In some, yes. But talk some analytics. I have some thoughts that I've been, some new aspects of the game I've been running. I've been like, oh, this is interesting. I'll chat with you guys.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah.
No,
we love that stuff.
So one thing that Karina, and I'll just turn it over to you because I know you love asking this question.
Okay. Yeah. So one thing that I like to ask everybody before we close out the show is, in 20 years, when you're the new Mark Long /CT and you've just carried this show on your back for the last 20 years, and you decide you're done with it, you're ready to put it all away and go live your life in peace and quiet, what message do you want to leave behind for people? What do you want people to remember about Kyland Young?
I mean, I think that it is pretty much the same thing that I got to say in like my final episode, not counting the reunion, was just like, I hope that I've had the honor or privilege of being able to represent a lot of different groups, like in terms of like being Black and Mexican, like Latino and autistic and ADHD, and like it is coming in as someone who feels different in a variety of ways. Like, I think that I call it like a privilege because it opens me up to so many different people to potentially see themselves in me. And if they see a little bit of themselves in me, and I've been able to, overcome some challenges and go after and accomplish some cool wins and experiences and all these things. It's just like, I've just had the benefit of, I think I have the benefit of believing in myself because I have been surrounded by a large family that has really loved and believed in me. And I know other people don't have that. So I'm like, hey, like my family, the love and belief that they have in me has been like unlocked this potential within yourself. And so if you see yourself in me, like even without that family support, recognize them pulling things from inside of me that you have inside you too. And that's what I want to leave behind is that message for people to be able to see that in themselves.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
No, that's
awesome.
Really great.
Yeah.
Kyland, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really do feel like if we allowed it, we could go for another 2 hours just talking theory and challenge, and probably games in general. And I'll start really deep diving on Big Brother with you, but
oh no, we'll do it. Let's find a time. Let's find time. We'll do another time.
I was gonna say, yeah. Who's to say we can't do this again?
and look, if the challenge and CBS keep talking, just saying there might be a larger crossover event happening. Who knows?
Okay.
So, Kyland, once again, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it, and thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. That's it for us. Love y'all. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.